In the cradle of civilization, where the Tigris and Euphrates once carved fertile valleys into the earth, an ancient people rose from the dust, brilliant, powerful, and still shrouded in secrecy. The Sumerians, the first great architects of human history, left behind more than just clay tablets and crumbling temples. They left riddles, puzzles so profound that even in our age of science and technology, they remain unsolved. How did a society over 5,000 years ago develop mathematics, astronomy, and complex laws with such uncanny precision? Why do their records speak of gods who descended from the heavens, bestowing knowledge and order? And what deeper truths hide in the countless fragments of cuneiform, etched into stone like whispers from another world? Each discovery only sharpens the mystery, blurring the line between myth and history. Were the Sumerians simply visionaries ahead of their time, or did they tap into something far more extraordinary, something we are still not ready to understand? Tonight, we step into the shadows of their forgotten world. So sit back, relax, and let's uncover the most unsolved Sumerian mysteries that history still cannot explain. In the barren deserts of southern Iraq, beneath the shifting sands of what was once Mesopotamia, archaeologists unearthed one of the most breathtaking discoveries of the 20th century. It was the 1920s when Sir Leonard Woolley and his team excavated the Royal Cemetery of a site dating back more than 4,500 years. There, among the tombs of kings, queens, and attendants, they uncovered something unexpected. Not weapons of war, nor treasures of conquest, but instruments of haunting beauty. The gold lyres of The lyres, adorned with gold, lapis lazuli, and intricate carvings, were not mere decorations. They were fully functional musical instruments, carefully crafted with an artistry that spoke of both technical mastery and deep cultural meaning. 4 lyres were found, each buried beside the remains of musicians who seemed to have been placed there deliberately, as if the music was meant to accompany the dead into another world. At first glance, their purpose seems clear. In many ancient societies, music played a vital role in ritual, ceremony, and funeral rites. Could these lyres have been intended to guide the spirits of the departed? To honor the gods of the underworld? To replicate in sound the harmony of the cosmos? Yet, the more we examine them, the more the questions multiply. The craftsmanship itself is astonishing. The gold plating, the precision of the carvings, and the sophisticated design raise an unsettling question. How did a people so early in human history develop such advanced artistic techniques? Some scholars point to the thriving trade networks of Sumer, suggesting that materials like lapis lazuli, imported from as far away as Afghanistan, allowed artisans to experiment, to elevate their work beyond mere functionality. But others wonder if the lyres represent more than just artistic achievement. Consider the iconography. The most famous of the lyres, often called the bull-headed lyre, features the head of a golden bull with eyes of inlaid shell and lapis. Beneath it, a panel of carved scenes depicts hybrid beings, human figures with animal features, engaged in what appear to be ritual acts. Are these mythological references, telling stories of gods and heroes now lost to us? Or are they symbolic depictions of a spiritual journey, instructions for navigating the afterlife? Some researchers interpret these carvings through the lens of Mesopotamian mythology. The bull, for example, may represent strength, fertility, or divinity. But others suggest that the lyres could have held a deeper, perhaps even esoteric significance. Music has always carried with it the power to move the human spirit, to alter moods, to elevate consciousness. Could the Sumerians have believed that certain sounds, certain frequencies, could open a gateway between worlds? This speculation grows when we consider how the lyres were buried. The instruments were found in what has been called the Great Death Pit, a mass burial where dozens of attendants lay alongside their rulers. Some appear to have died willingly, or perhaps not so willingly, drinking poison or being ritually sacrificed. The Lyres were placed among them, silent witnesses to an event that remains shrouded in ambiguity. Why would an entire retinue, complete with musicians, follow their king or queen into death? Was this a display of loyalty, a belief in an afterlife where they would continue to serve? Or was it something far more complex, a ritual designed to preserve balance between the world of the living and the world of the dead? There are modern theories that push even further. Some have suggested that ancient Mesopotamian music might have been based on mathematical principles, that the lyres were tuned to scales echoing the natural harmonics of the universe. If true, the instruments may not have been intended solely for entertainment or ritual, but as tools to connect the human soul with cosmic order. And then there are those who ask the most provocative question of all: could the lyres have preserved knowledge beyond their time? Knowledge perhaps inherited, not invented. In the cuneiform records of Sumer, the gods themselves are often described as bestowing gifts upon humanity: writing, kingship, agriculture, and, yes, music. Were the gold lyres of a reflection of divine instruction, or merely human ingenuity reaching toward the unknown? Mainstream scholarship remains cautious. For most historians and archaeologists, the lyres are evidence of the sophistication of Sumerian culture, a testament to the central role of music in both life and death. And yet, even within this explanation, the mysteries remain. Why were such extraordinary resources poured into instruments destined to be buried forever? Why adorn them with images so strange, so layered with possible meaning, that even today we struggle to decode them? Standing before the gold lyres of now restored and displayed in museums, you cannot help but feel a sense of reverence. These are not silent relics. Even without strings, they seem to resonate, to hum with echoes of a lost world. One can imagine the haunting melodies that once filled the royal courts of drifting upward into the night sky, carrying prayers, laments, and perhaps secrets we will never fully grasp. The truth is, we may never know. Were the lyres instruments of ritual, tools of transcendence, or simple expressions of beauty and devotion? Perhaps they were all these things at once. Perhaps they were something more. The gold lyres of remind us that the past is never fully closed, that every artifact holds a story waiting to be uncovered. And as we look closer at their golden faces and mysterious carvings, one question lingers. What other secrets might still lie buried in the sands of Mesopotamia, waiting to be found? As we leave behind the haunting echoes of the gold lyres of another relic of Sumer emerges from the shadows, an artifact not of sound, but of silence. From the city of Uruk, the birthplace of kings and myths, comes a face carved in stone so exquisite, so enigmatic, that it continues to puzzle scholars and mystics alike. This is the Warka mask, one of the oldest known representations of the human face in history. Discovered in 1939 among the ruins of the Eanna temple complex, the mask dates back to around 3100 BCE. Made of marble, it measures just over 20 centimeters in height, and yet its presence is overwhelming. The features are refined, symmetrical, and startlingly lifelike. The hollow eyes once inlaid with precious stones or shells, the delicate lips slightly parted, the cheeks and chin smooth and idealized. To look upon it is to gaze into a timeless visage, one that bridges the gap between mortal humanity and divine perfection. At first, archaeologists believed it to be part of a full statue, perhaps once clothed in garments of gold and adorned with a wig or headdress. The mask may have been fixed to a wooden body, its empty eyes glowing with inlays that caught the flicker of temple firelight. But who was this face meant to represent? The most widely accepted theory is that it depicts Inanna, later known as Ishtar, the goddess of love, war, and fertility, the great patron deity of Uruk. The temple where the mask was found was dedicated to her, and the features of the sculpture, though idealized, are consistent with divine imagery. If true, then the Warka mask may be one of the earliest surviving portraits of a goddess, a sacred object that connected worshippers to the presence of the divine. And yet, there are questions. The mask's design is strikingly advanced for its time, displaying a mastery of proportion and balance rarely seen in early Mesopotamian art. Where did this sudden refinement come from? Was it the product of gradual artistic evolution, or does it suggest a burst of knowledge and technique that appeared almost fully formed? Then there is the matter of expression. The face is serene, calm, and strangely detached, radiating not merely beauty but authority. Was this intentional? A way of emphasizing divine otherness? Or was it meant to convey a universal archetype of humanity, a face beyond individual identity, representing something larger than life? Theories begin to diverge here. Some scholars argue that the Warka mask may not have represented Inanna specifically, but rather an abstract concept of divinity itself, the very idea of the sacred made flesh in stone. Others have suggested that the mask might have been used in ritual drama, perhaps as part of a ceremonial figure carried through the streets during festivals. If so, the mask would have been more than an object of art. It would have been a living presence, embodying a god or goddess in the eyes of the people. But speculation stretches further still. Among those who look to the more mysterious side of Mesopotamian history, the mask has been interpreted in ways that move beyond archaeology. Some note the extraordinary precision of the carving, asking whether the mask represents an idealized human form or something else entirely. Could it have been modeled after beings described in Sumerian myths, the so-called Anunnaki, who were said to have descended from the heavens? If so, was this mask a stylized portrait of the gods themselves, preserved in stone as a reminder of their power? There are also intriguing comparisons to be made with later traditions. The Greeks would create masks of gods and heroes to be worn in ritual theater, blending the mortal and the divine. In Egypt, funerary masks like that of Tutankhamun served as both protection and transformation, guiding the deceased into the afterlife. Could the Warka mask have been part of a similar, though earlier, practice, an attempt to channel divine identity through physical representation? Mainstream scholarship remains careful, pointing to the cultural context of Uruk and the centrality of Inanna's worship. Yet, even within these explanations, mysteries remain. The mask was found damaged, deliberately broken. Was this an act of ancient iconoclasm, a rejection of the goddess's power? Or was it part of a ritual symbolizing death, renewal, or the transference of divine essence? The true reason has been lost to time. The journey of the mask itself adds another layer to its mystery. After its discovery, it survived war, looting, and loss. In 2003, during the chaos of the Iraq Museum's plundering, the mask was stolen, vanishing into the underworld of antiquities trafficking. It was later recovered, damaged but still intact, as if fate itself was unwilling to let this face disappear from human history. That survival alone feels like part of its story, an object that refuses to be silenced.
To stand before the Warka mask today is to feel an unsettling familiarity. The smooth contours, the hollow eyes, the almost human perfection. One might almost expect it to breathe. It reminds us that the Sumerians were not only inventors of writing, law, and astronomy, but also seekers of meaning through form. They sought to capture, in stone, something that words could not contain. Yet the question lingers. What exactly did they see in this face? Was it a goddess, an archetype, a divine messenger, or simply an artistic vision? Was it meant for the eyes of worshippers or for the unseen gaze of gods? The Warka mask remains a paradox. It is at once an object of beauty and a vessel of mystery, a fragment of a lost world that continues to challenge our understanding of how the first civilizations saw themselves, their gods, and the universe around them. And so, we are left to wonder, how many more faces of the past still lie buried, waiting to emerge from the dust, carrying with them secrets that even time cannot erase. From the serene, haunting face of the Warka mask, we turn to another collection of figures that speak not through beauty alone, but through presence. Deep in the ruins of Enheduanna, modern Tel Asmar in Iraq, archaeologists uncovered a hidden chamber in 1933. What they found inside has since been known as the Tel Asmar Hoard, a gathering of 12 statues, carefully arranged, as if frozen in eternal worship. At first glance, these figures appear simple. They are not polished marble, nor adorned with gold like the treasures of Uruk. Most are carved from gypsum, limestone, or alabaster, standing only a few feet high. Yet it is their faces that arrest the viewer. Wide, staring eyes dominate each figure, inlaid with shell and bitumen, fixed in an expression of perpetual watchfulness. Their hands are clasped in prayer, their bodies still, their gazes unblinking. Why were they made this way? Scholars suggest that these statues were votive offerings placed in the temple on behalf of worshippers who could not always be present. Each figure, then, may have been a substitute for a living devotee, an eternal stand-in to gaze upon the god statue, to offer silent prayer day and night. In this interpretation, the exaggerated eyes make sense. They are not simply human features, but symbols of devotion. Eyes wide open in constant reverence, never closing, never faltering. But even within this explanation, mysteries abound. The largest figure in the hoard, believed to represent a priest or perhaps a god, towers above the others. Its eyes, like the rest, are wide and penetrating, yet its stature conveys authority. Was this arrangement meant to replicate a hierarchy of worshippers before the divine, or was it something more? Could these figures have represented not only individuals, but the very idea of humanity in relationship to the sacred? The placement of the hoard deep within the temple adds further intrigue. The statues were found buried together, deliberately hidden. Why would such carefully crafted offerings be concealed beneath the floor, never to be seen again? Some suggest it may have been a ritual retirement, an intentional act to replace older votives with new ones. Others wonder whether this burial reflected a moment of crisis, perhaps an invasion, a shift in religious practice, or even a conscious decision to remove these watchful figures from the eyes of the living. And yet, there are elements that defy simple explanation. Those enormous eyes, so out of proportion with the rest of the face, raise unsettling questions. Were they merely symbolic, or were they attempting to depict something real, something the Sumerians themselves had witnessed? Some fringe interpretations propose that the eyes reflect encounters with otherworldly beings, divine messengers, or perhaps the Anunnaki described in Sumerian mythology. In this reading, the statues are not representations of humans at all, but attempts to capture the likeness of something beyond human. Mainstream scholars remain cautious, emphasizing symbolism, ritual, and cultural practice. Still, the power of the statues cannot be denied. To stand before them today in a museum far from their original temple is to feel their gaze upon you. Their eyes, unblinking, seem to pierce through time, as if still fulfilling their ancient duty.
The questions grow deeper when we consider the individuality of the figures. Though similar in form, each has slight differences, variations in beard, dress, or posture, that suggest they were meant to represent specific people. If so, who were they? Priests? Nobles? Ordinary citizens? And if these statues were indeed substitutes for living worshippers, does that mean these individuals believed part of themselves, perhaps their soul, their essence, was bound into stone, standing vigil forever before their god? Such a belief would not be unusual in ancient Mesopotamia, where the line between the material and the spiritual was fluid. Objects could carry divine power, images could embody presence, and statues could serve as vessels of life. The Tel Asmar figures, then, may have been more than symbolic. They may have been animate in the eyes of those who made them, alive in a way that transcends our modern understanding. The deliberate burial of the Hoard complicates the mystery further. If these figures were indeed alive in a spiritual sense, what did it mean to enter them beneath the temple floor? Was it an act of reverence, akin to laying the dead to rest? Or was it an attempt to silence them, to remove their watchful presence from the world? The silence of the Hoard resists easy answers. There are also those who see in the Hoard a kind of encoded message. The uniform posture, the wide eyes, the arrangement together. Could these be more than ritual objects? Could they represent, symbolically or literally, a record of something witnessed, a group of beings whose appearance and posture demanded replication? This speculative view remains unproven, yet the suggestion lingers. What if the Tel Asmar statues are not simply votive figures, but testimonies in stone? Even without such speculation, the Hoard is extraordinary. It offers us a glimpse into the devotional life of the Sumerians, their yearning to be present before their gods, their desire to fix their gaze upon the divine. It also reminds us of the complexity of early Mesopotamian spirituality, where the boundary between worshipper and deity, object and essence, was far less defined than it is today. And so, the figures remain. Their eyes, impossibly wide, continue to stare outward, as if searching for something, or guarding something, that we cannot yet see. They invite us to question not only their purpose, but the world view of the people who created them. Were they symbols of devotion, eternal prayers carved in stone, or were they something more? Silent witnesses to mysteries now forgotten, echoes of encounters that defy explanation. The Tel Asmar Hoard leaves us with a feeling both unsettling and profound. These figures, buried for millennia, still look upon us as though we are the ones being studied. Their meaning remains unresolved, their gaze eternal. And we are left to wonder, what did those wide eyes once see that we cannot? From the watchful eyes of the Tel Asmar figures, carved to gaze eternally upon the divine, we turn now to objects that carried a different kind of vision. Monuments not of worship, but of power, law, and memory. These are the Kudurru stones, boundary markers from the late Babylonian and Kassite periods, some 3,000 years old. At first glance, they appear to be little more than weathered blocks of stone, but upon closer inspection, their surfaces reveal a tapestry of symbols, inscriptions, and images whose meanings are still debated. A Kudurru was meant to record the granting of land, privileges, or exemptions by a king. In their most straightforward sense, they were legal documents carved into stone, property lines drawn not on parchment, but on the enduring face of basalt and limestone. The inscriptions detail the transaction, the names of those involved, and the conditions of the grant. Yet, alongside the cuneiform text, another layer of meaning emerges, rows of carved symbols and divine emblems that seem to speak a hidden language beyond words. These symbols are unlike anything found in ordinary contracts. They are stylized, abstract,
often arranged in deliberate sequences. There are crescent moons and solar disks, serpents coiled in protective arcs, horned crowns, stars, and geometric patterns whose significance remains uncertain. Many of these images are recognized as divine emblems, shorthand for the gods of Mesopotamia. A crescent for the moon god Sin, a star for Ishtar, a spade for Marduk. But why include them here, on documents of land and law? One explanation is that these images served as seals of divine authority, visual guarantees that the gods themselves had witnessed the transaction. To defy the decree inscribed upon the stone would not only be a crime against the king, but also a sacrilege against the divine order. In this sense, the symbols are both practical and theological, fusing governance with belief. And yet, the arrangement of these emblems often goes beyond simple attribution. On some stones, the sequence of symbols reads almost like a sentence, a string of divine signs lined up with a precision that feels intentional. Were these merely lists of gods invoked for protection, or did they encode a deeper, more hidden message? Could there be a symbolic script woven into the Kudurru, a language of images parallel to the written cuneiform? The very nature of the Kudurru invites such questions. Unlike clay tablets, which were commonplace and practical, these stones were ceremonial and rare. They were set up in temples or palaces, not in fields or villages, suggesting that their function was more than administrative. If their purpose was simply to mark land, why inscribe them with such complexity, combining text with layers of sacred imagery? Some researchers argue that the Kudurru represent a form of cosmic map. The boundary being marked was not only a tract of land, but also a reflection of cosmic order, the alignment of human law with divine law. In this interpretation, the emblems function as coordinates of meaning, situating the legal decree within the larger framework of the universe. Others propose a more esoteric reading. They suggest that the symbols may have carried hidden knowledge, accessible only to priests or initiates. Could the Kudurru, in addition to recording land grants, have encoded astronomical data, ritual instructions, or even mathematical principles? Such interpretations remain speculative, but the unusual density of symbolic content continues to provoke debate. Consider the imagery of serpents, which appears frequently on Kudurru stones. To some, these serpents are protective guardians, encircling the stone's decree with divine protection. To others, they hint at deeper mythological themes, the entwining of chaos and order, the eternal cycle of renewal. Are these simply religious motifs or fragments of a symbolic code we have yet to fully decipher? Equally enigmatic are the horned crowns, symbols of divinity that appear stacked in vertical sequences. Do they represent a hierarchy of gods, a visual theology etched into stone? Or could they symbolize something else entirely? Perhaps stages of initiation, levels of authority, or even markers of astronomical cycles. The mystery deepens when we remember that the Kudurru were often buried or hidden after their creation, placed not in public view but within temple foundations or sacred spaces. Why conceal them? Was it to protect them from tampering, or did the very act of burial suggest that their meaning was intended not for ordinary eyes, but for the gods themselves? Modern scholars tend to focus on the legal and administrative aspects of the Kudurru. They see them as a kind of permanent archive, a royal guarantee backed by divine authority. But even within this framework, there are puzzles. Why do some stones contain long lists of curses against those who might violate their terms, invoking gods of storm, plague, and death? Was this legal deterrence, or was it part of a ritual meant to imbue the stone with actual protective power? And then there are the questions that slip into the realm of the speculative. Some suggest that the Kudurru could have functioned as teaching tools, encoding knowledge in symbolic form to preserve it across generations. Others propose that they may even contain messages meant for posterity, communications not only within their own time, but across time itself. Could the Kudurru be seen as an early attempt to craft a language that transcends words, a symbolic code meant to endure when spoken language failed? When we look at these stones today, cracked and worn by millennia, their surfaces still seem alive with meaning. The cuneiform texts are painstakingly translated, yet the symbols retain an air of resistance, as if holding back secrets not meant to be easily revealed. They stand as reminders that in Sumerian thought, law, religion, and cosmology were never separate realms. Each was woven into the other, forming a worldview in which every act of governance carried cosmic significance. But what if there is more? What if the Kudurru stones are not just boundary markers of land, but boundary markers of knowledge, thresholds between what can be spoken and what must remain hidden? Were the Sumerians encoding mysteries in stone, mysteries meant to be seen but not fully understood? We may never know for certain. The Kudurru resist final interpretation, their language of symbols hovering between clarity and enigma. They remind us that the first civilizations were not only administrators and builders, but also seekers of deeper truths, truths that they embedded in their artifacts, truths that continue to elude us. And so, the Kudurru stones remain, silent, immovable, yet whispering through their symbols of a hidden language that perhaps only the gods themselves could read. They leave us to wonder, what messages lie locked within their emblems, waiting for a key that may never be found? From the silent stones of the Kudurru, etched with symbols that seem to whisper a hidden language, our journey leads us back once more to the city of Uruk, the beating heart of early Mesopotamian civilization. Here, in the sacred precincts dedicated to Inanna, goddess of love and war, archaeologists unearthed an artifact that continues to captivate both historians and seekers of mystery alike. It is tall, elegant, and carved with scenes that seem almost cinematic in their storytelling. This is the Warka Vase, one of the earliest known narrative reliefs in human history. Standing just over a meter in height, carved from alabaster, the vase was discovered in 1933 among the ruins of Inanna's temple complex. Its surface, though weathered by millennia, still tells a story in 3 distinct registers, bands that spiral upward like chapters of a book. At the bottom, we see rippling water, the source of life, nourishing rows of plants and animals. Above them, a procession of figures, their bodies stylized yet deliberate, march forward with offerings in their hands. And at the top, a commanding scene. A tall female figure, widely believed to be Inanna herself, receives tribute from a priest-king or high official. At first glance, the Warka vase appears to be a simple ritual object, a depiction of the agricultural cycle, the abundance of the land, and the offering of its fruits to the divine. Yet the deeper one looks, the more questions arise. Is this truly a mere representation of harvest and devotion, or is there something more encoded in its imagery? Mainstream interpretations hold that the vase illustrates the Sumerian understanding of cosmic order. Life begins with water, the earth yields its bounty, humanity tends the fields and herds, and finally, the gods receive their due. It is a story of balance, a reminder that human survival depended upon the proper relationship between nature, people, and divinity. In this view, the Warka vase is a theological statement, a visual expression of how the world itself was ordered. And yet, there are peculiarities. The procession of figures in the middle register is strikingly formal. Each figure carries offerings, baskets of grain, jars of liquid, animals, but their posture and movement suggest more than daily life. Some scholars argue that this was not just a representation of ritual, but an actual ritual in miniature, a sacred festival, perhaps even the famous sacred marriage rite, in which the king symbolically united with the goddess to ensure fertility and abundance for the land. If so, the vase is not merely agricultural, but deeply political, an image of divine kingship itself. But what of the figure at the top? The identification of the tall female as Inanna seems natural given the temple context. Yet the image is ambiguous. Some suggest it could instead represent a high priestess, embodying the goddess in ritual form. Others point to the strange posture of the priest-king before her, arms extended in offering, as evidence of a performance, a symbolic drama rather than a literal audience with the goddess. Was the vase depicting an eternal truth, or a ritual enactment of power? The artistry itself raises questions. For a work so early, dating to around 3200 BCE, the sophistication of the narrative is extraordinary. This is not simple decoration. It is structured, intentional storytelling carved into stone. Where did this sudden leap in visual language come from? Was it the natural product of centuries of experimentation? Or does it suggest a level of symbolic thinking and cultural sophistication that we have only begun to appreciate? Speculation stretches further when we consider the vase's function. Was it simply decorative, displayed during rituals and festivals? Or was it itself a sacred vessel, used to carry offerings of water, wine, or oil? Some suggest that the vase may have been used in libations, ritual pourings of liquid before the gods, its imagery reflecting the very act it performed. If true, then the vase was not only a record of devotion, but a participant in it. And yet, as with so many Sumerian artifacts, ambiguity deepens the mystery. The vase was found shattered, deliberately broken in antiquity. Was this an act of desecration? An enemy's attempt to destroy the symbol of Uruk's power? Or was it ritual destruction, a way of releasing the sacred essence once the object's purpose was fulfilled? Like the broken Warka mask, the damage itself may hold meaning, another chapter of the story forever lost to time. Some researchers push the questions further still. Could the imagery on the vase represent more than ritual or agriculture? Could it encode astronomical or cosmological knowledge? The layered registers, water, plants, animals, humans, and gods, could be read as levels of existence, a Sumerian vision of the cosmos. The upward progression suggests a hierarchy, from the natural world to humanity to divinity. Was this an early attempt to map the universe in symbolic form? There are even those who see in the Warka vase traces of something more esoteric. They ask, do the ordered rows of plants and animals represent mere abundance, or a catalog of sacred species? Could the figures be more than worshippers, perhaps initiates in a mystery tradition, participating in a rite that bound the earthly to the divine? Such readings remain speculative, yet the very structure of the vase seems to invite them. It is not random, it is carefully composed, as if carrying a message meant to endure across millennia. The modern story of the vase adds another layer of poignancy. Like the Warka mask, it too suffered theft during the looting of the Uruk Museum in 2003. For a time, it vanished into the shadowy world of antiquities trafficking, only to be recovered, damaged but restorable. That it survived at all feels almost symbolic, as if the artifact itself refuses to be erased, carrying its message forward into the present. To stand before the Warka vase today is to confront more than stone. It is to glimpse the worldview of a civilization at the dawn of history, a people who sought to express in images the very structure of existence. Its carved bands draw the eye upward, from water and earth to humanity and the divine, as though guiding the viewer on a journey of understanding. And yet, at every turn, questions linger. Was the vase a record of ritual, a map of the cosmos, or something else entirely?
something we cannot yet see through the veil of time? Did it speak only to the Sumerians who crafted it? Or does it still speak to us now, its message obscured but not erased? Like the eyes of the Tel Asmar statues, like the symbols on the Kudurru stones, the Warka vase holds our gaze and does not let go. It reminds us that even at the very dawn of civilization, humanity was already asking profound questions about order, about power, about the relationship between the seen and the unseen. And so, the vase remains an enigma. Its story unfolds across stone, yet its meaning continues to elude us. We are left to wonder, what truths did the Sumerians carve into this vessel, and how many more of their secrets still lie buried beneath the sands of Uruk waiting to be revealed? From the flowing imagery carved upon the alabaster surface of the Warka vase, where cosmic order and human devotion were etched into stone, our path leads eastward across the plains of Mesopotamia, to a site less celebrated, but no less enigmatic. Here, near the banks of the Diyala River, lies the ancient city of Khafajah. It is a place where architecture, rather than art, speaks in riddles. And at the heart of these ruins stands one of the strangest constructions in all of Sumerian archaeology, the Temple Oval. At first sight, the Temple Oval defies expectation. Where we might anticipate the sharp angles of ziggurats or the rectilinear plans of early city temples, we find instead a vast enclosure, its walls curving in smooth arcs, forming a massive oval shape. Measuring nearly 100 by 80 meters, this unique layout was unlike anything else discovered in the region. From above, it resembles the outline of a great amphitheater, or the elongated form of an eye. Inside its enclosing walls, multiple structures were uncovered, including a temple at its center, courtyards, storerooms, and administrative spaces. Archaeologists who first excavated the Temple Oval in the 1930s were struck by its peculiarity. Why, they asked, would the builders depart so radically from the rectangular forms that dominated Sumerian sacred architecture? What purpose could this colossal oval have served? The answers remain elusive. Mainstream interpretations suggest that the Temple Oval was a religious complex dedicated to the moon god Sin, or to a local deity whose worship may have centered in Khafajah. Its size and monumental form indicate it was no ordinary shrine, but a major cultic center. The oval walls, thick and imposing, may have served to set the sacred space apart from the rest of the city, an architectural boundary separating the divine from the mundane. Within, priests and temple officials may have managed offerings, organized rituals, and overseen the economic functions tied to the worship of the gods. And yet, the oval shape itself continues to provoke curiosity. Was it merely symbolic? Perhaps representing the cosmic egg, a womb of creation, or the divine eye watching over the city? Or was it practical, designed to withstand floods, earthquakes, or the shifting sands of time? No definitive explanation has been offered. The temple at the center adds another layer to the mystery. Excavations revealed altars, offering tables and ceremonial installations, but also evidence of large-scale storage and redistribution. This duality, ritual on one hand, administration on the other, suggests that the temple functioned as both a house of the gods and a center of economic control. Offerings of grain, livestock, and goods may have flowed in, not only to feed the divine, but also to sustain the city's population. Could the oval, then, represent not only a religious precinct, but also the seat of early centralized authority, a fusion of the sacred and the political? Speculation deepens when one considers the acoustics of the space. The oval walls, curving inward, may have amplified sound. Could chants, prayers, or ritual songs performed within its bounds have resonated with unusual intensity,
filling the enclosure with echoes that heightened the sense of divine presence. Some researchers wonder if this was intentional, an early experiment in sacred sound design, where architecture was used not only to enclose, but also to transform experience. Others push the questions further. The sheer uniqueness of the design has led some to suggest that the temple oval was not a temple in the conventional sense at all, but something altogether different. Could it have been an astronomical observatory, its shape aligned with celestial patterns? Was it a ceremonial theater where large groups gathered to witness rituals that reenacted cosmic dramas? The lack of parallels elsewhere in Mesopotamia makes every possibility feel both plausible and uncertain. The temple oval also raises questions of continuity. Why was such a design attempted here, in Khafajah, and nowhere else, at least nowhere that we have found? Was it an experiment that failed, abandoned after one generation, or was it a localized tradition, meaningful to the people of this city, but not adopted more broadly? The absence of other ovals in Mesopotamian sacred architecture only heightens the enigma. Adding to the mystery is the matter of its eventual decline. Archaeological evidence suggests that the temple oval was used for several centuries, but eventually abandoned and buried. Why? Was the site deliberately decommissioned, its sacred power withdrawn? Or did natural disaster, invasion, or shifting religious centers render it obsolete? Like the deliberate breaking of the Warka vase, could the oval's abandonment itself have been ritual, a closing of a sacred circle no longer meant to be walked? From the flowing imagery carved upon the alabaster surface of the Warka vase, where cosmic order and human devotion were etched into stone, our path leads eastward across the plains of Mesopotamia, to a site less celebrated but no less enigmatic. Here, near the banks of the Diyala River, lies the ancient city of Khafajah. It is a place where architecture, rather than art, speaks in riddles. And at the heart of these ruins stands one of the strangest constructions in all of Sumerian archaeology, the Temple Oval. At first sight, the Temple Oval defies expectation. Where we might anticipate the sharp angles of ziggurats or the rectilinear plans of early city temples, we find instead a vast enclosure, its walls curving in smooth arcs, forming a massive oval shape. Measuring nearly 100 by 80 meters, this unique layout was unlike anything else discovered in the region. From above, it resembles the outline of a great amphitheater or the elongated form of an eye. Inside its enclosing walls, multiple structures were uncovered, including a temple at its center, courtyards, storerooms, and administrative spaces. Archaeologists who first excavated the Temple Oval in the 1930s were struck by its peculiarity. Why, they asked, would the builders depart so radically from the rectangular forms that dominated Sumerian sacred architecture? What purpose could this colossal oval have served? The answers remain elusive. Mainstream interpretations suggest that the Temple Oval was a religious complex, dedicated to the moon god Sin, or to a local deity whose worship may have centered in Khafajah. Its size and monumental form indicate it was no ordinary shrine, but a major cultic center. The oval walls, thick and imposing, may have served to set the sacred space apart from the rest of the city, an architectural boundary separating the divine from the mundane. Within, priests and temple officials may have managed offerings, organized rituals, and overseen the economic functions tied to the worship of the gods. And yet, the oval shape itself continues to provoke curiosity. Was it merely symbolic, perhaps representing the cosmic egg, a womb of creation, or the divine eye watching over the city? Or was it practical, designed to withstand floods, earthquakes, or the shifting sands of time? No definitive explanation has been offered. The temple at the center adds another layer to the mystery.
Excavations revealed altars offering tables and ceremonial installations, but also evidence of large-scale storage and redistribution. This duality, ritual on one hand, administration on the other, suggests that the temple functioned as both a house of the gods and a center of economic control. Offerings of grain, livestock, and goods may have flowed in, not only to feed the divine, but also to sustain the city's population. Could the oval, then, represent not only a religious precinct, but also the seat of early centralized authority, a fusion of the sacred and the political? Speculation deepens when one considers the acoustics of the space. The oval walls, curving inward, may have amplified sound. Could chants, prayers, or ritual songs performed within its bounds have resonated with unusual intensity, filling the enclosure with echoes that heightened the sense of divine presence? Some researchers wonder if this was intentional, an early experiment in sacred sound design, where architecture was used not only to enclose, but also to transform experience. Others push the questions further. The sheer uniqueness of the design has led some to suggest that the temple oval was not a temple in the conventional sense at all, but something altogether different. Could it have been an astronomical observatory, its shape aligned with celestial patterns? Was it a ceremonial theater, where large groups gathered to witness rituals that reenacted cosmic dramas? The lack of parallels elsewhere in Mesopotamia makes every possibility feel both plausible and uncertain. The temple oval also raises questions of continuity. Why was such a design attempted here, in Khafajah, and nowhere else, at least nowhere that we have found? Was it an experiment that failed, abandoned after one generation? Or was it a localized tradition, meaningful to the people of this city, but not adopted more broadly? The absence of other ovals in Mesopotamian sacred architecture only heightens the enigma. Adding to the mystery is the matter of its eventual decline. Archaeological evidence suggests that the temple oval was used for several centuries, but eventually abandoned and buried. Why? Was the site deliberately decommissioned, its sacred power withdrawn? Or did natural disaster, invasion, or shifting religious centers render it obsolete? Like the deliberate breaking of the Warka vase, could the oval's abandonment itself have been ritual, a closing of a sacred circle no longer meant to be walked? From the silent, curving walls of the Khafajah temple oval, a space whose purpose continues to confound scholars, we shift from stone and structure to voice and verse. Here, in the ancient city of nearly 4,300 years ago, a figure emerged whose words would echo across millennia. A high priestess, a poet, and perhaps the first-named author in human history, Enheduanna. Her hymns to Inanna, the goddess of love, war, and divine power, are preserved on clay tablets that have survived the ravages of time. Yet their meaning remains as enigmatic as the temples and statues that once surrounded her. Enheduanna was the daughter of Sargon of Akkad, the founder of the Akkadian Empire. Her position as high priestess of Nana at Ur placed her at the intersection of political authority and religious devotion. It is here, in the sanctuaries of the moon god, that she composed a series of hymns dedicated to Inanna. These texts are lyrical, precise, and hauntingly beautiful, their language rich with symbolism, metaphor, and ritual nuance. But beyond their literary brilliance, the hymns carry a mystery. What deeper truths did Enheduanna intend to convey, and why have her words endured, yet resisted complete comprehension? At first glance, the hymns read as prayers and praise. Inanna is exalted, her power described over heaven and earth, her might in both love and conflict celebrated. Enheduanna writes of temples, rituals, and the hierarchy of the gods, intertwining political and religious authority. They are, in many ways, hymns of devotion, a reflection of Sumerian religious thought at the height of its civilization. Yet,
closer examination reveals layers of subtlety that go beyond praise. Repetition, alliteration, and the careful placement of lines suggest that these hymns were structured not only for recitation, but for ritual performance. Could it be that each verse was meant to induce a meditative or trance-like state in the listener? That the rhythm and sound of the words, combined with their sacred content, held power beyond mere meaning? Some modern scholars suggest that Sumerians believed words themselves possessed agency, that properly spoken, they could influence the divine and the mortal realms alike. The complexity of Enheduanna's language has long captivated linguists. Her hymns employ metaphors that are simultaneously political, spiritual, and cosmic. Inanna is both a goddess of the city and a force of the universe. The hymns describe her victories and her presence in the human world, yet she is also represented in abstract, symbolic terms that defy straightforward interpretation. Could it be that the texts encode layers of knowledge intended for the initiated priesthood, a sacred teaching woven into lyric form? Consider the famous Exaltation of Inanna. In it, Enheduanna describes the goddess as the one who traverses the heavens, whose glance touches all things. Some scholars read this as metaphorical, an illustration of divine omnipresence, but others have speculated that it may preserve fragments of celestial observation, encoded as poetic language. Did Enheduanna's words reflect not only theological doctrine but also an understanding of the heavens, a mapping of the night sky in metaphorical terms? And if so, how much of that knowledge was intended for the broader public, and how much was secret, meant only for those initiated into temple mysteries? The hymns are also deeply personal. Enheduanna writes in the first person, expressing devotion, fear, and even despair. She recounts times when her position was threatened, when political upheaval imperiled her authority and the sanctity of her office. In doing so, she humanizes herself, weaving her own experiences into the eternal narrative of the goddess. This blending of personal and divine voice is striking. Was it meant as literary artistry, as political strategy, or as a ritual technique designed to align human will with divine purpose? Perhaps it was all three. Beyond the words themselves, the medium adds another layer of mystery. The hymns were inscribed on clay tablets, baked to endure the centuries. But many copies have been found, suggesting wide circulation. How were these hymns used in practice? Were they sung during temple ceremonies, recited privately by priests, or memorized for performance at sacred festivals? And how did the physical act of writing, of shaping the cuneiform signs, contribute to their power? In Sumerian thought, inscriptions themselves carried authority. To carve a divine text into clay was to give it permanence and potency. Some modern interpreters have suggested more speculative possibilities. The hymns are structured with meticulous repetition and rhythmic patterns. Could they have functioned as mnemonic devices, preserving knowledge in a form that could survive the fragility of memory? Could the seemingly poetic descriptions of gods, cities, and cosmic order encode mathematical or astronomical principles hidden within layers of symbolism that have been lost to us? While these theories cannot be proven, they underscore the profound sophistication of Enheduanna's work, hinting at a level of intellectual and spiritual thought that may surpass our modern understanding. There is also the question of voice. Enheduanna's choice to write in the first person, addressing the goddess directly, may have been revolutionary. She asserts her own presence and authority while remaining subordinate to the divine. In a society where women rarely held public power, her voice is both personal and authoritative, bridging human and divine realms. But why did her work survive while so many others were lost? Was it the inherent power of her poetry, the political prestige of her family, or something else entirely? Even after thousands of years, her hymns continue to resonate. Scholars and linguists study them with reverence, but the full depth of their meaning remains elusive. Are these texts purely devotional, or do they conceal a framework of Sumerian cosmology, law, and spiritual practice encoded in metaphor? Could they represent one of humanity's earliest attempts to capture the intangible, the workings of the divine, the pulse of the cosmos, and the intersection of human life with forces beyond understanding? Standing before the clay tablets today, one can almost hear the voice of Enheduanna herself, rising from the ruins of Ur. Her words echo with devotion, with authority, with questions that transcend time. Each line, each carefully placed sign, carries not only meaning but mystery. It is a bridge between the mortal and the divine, between the known and the unknowable. The Inanna hymns remind us that Sumerians were not only builders, administrators, and ritualists, they were thinkers and poets, individuals capable of profound reflection on existence, power, and spirituality. And yet, even in the precision of her verses, even in the clarity of her devotion, the mystery remains. What did Enheduanna truly intend to convey? Were her hymns designed to instruct, to perform magic, to record celestial patterns, or to simply honor a goddess in the language available to her? Or did they serve multiple purposes simultaneously, layered in a way that ensured only the initiated could fully grasp them? Like the curved walls of the Khafajah temple oval, the symbols on the Kudurru, and the images on the Warka Vase, the Inanna hymns are both a record and a puzzle. They invite us to listen, to study, and to reflect, but they do not yield their secrets easily. And perhaps that is precisely the point, that the sacred, in Sumerian thought, was meant to inspire awe and contemplation, to bridge the gap between what is known and what is beyond understanding. As we immerse ourselves in Enheduanna's voice, we are reminded that the mysteries of Sumer are not merely in their objects or architecture, but in their ideas, their words, and their vision of the cosmos. And so, we are left to wonder, what other truths might her hymns conceal, waiting for discovery by those willing to read between the lines of history? From the words of Enheduanna, echoing through the sacred halls of Ur, and carrying devotion, authority, and mystery across millennia, we now turn our gaze to one of the earliest monumental expressions of Sumerian spiritual life, the White Temple of Uruk. Perched atop the massive Eanna ziggurat, its gleaming mud brick walls would have caught the first light of dawn, signaling not only the presence of the divine, but also the center of the city's ritual and political power. To stand before it is to confront both architectural brilliance and enigma. Here, in the very stones themselves, traces of ritual survive that historians and archaeologists continue to puzzle over. Constructed around 3300 BCE, the White Temple represents a high point of Uruk civilization. Its imposing rectangular form sits atop a terrace raised some 14 meters above the surrounding city. A grand staircase leads to the entrance, flanked by wide platforms whose purpose remains debated. The interior consists of a small, windowless sanctuary, where priests likely performed sacred rites for the city's patron deities, perhaps Inanna herself. From the outset, the structure communicates both separation and hierarchy, an ascension from the mortal world to the sacred, a deliberate pathway guiding worshippers toward the presence of the divine. Yet the very purpose of the rituals performed within the White Temple remains shrouded in mystery. Archaeological evidence points to offerings of food, drink, and possibly sacrificial animals, but the exact nature, timing, and sequence of ceremonies remain speculative. Were these daily rites of sustenance, ensuring the favor of the gods? Or were they rare, grandiose performances linked to celestial events, timed with the cycles of the moon and stars in ways we can only guess? Some scholars suggest that the White Temple functioned not just as a place of worship, but as a stage for ritualized enactments of cosmic order. Consider the architecture. The central sanctuary, deliberately windowless, creates an isolated, almost womb-like space. Here, priests may have performed rites designed to symbolically replicate the creation of the world, the ordering of life, and the assertion of divine authority over the city. The ascent via the monumental staircase itself could have been part of a ritual journey, a metaphorical elevation of consciousness as well as physical elevation above the urban landscape. Intriguingly, the orientation of the temple appears to correspond with celestial patterns. The staircase faces the southeast, toward the rising sun, suggesting that light itself played a role in ritual enactments. Could this alignment have transformed at certain times of the year, illuminating the sanctuary in ways that enhanced symbolic meaning? Did the interplay of light and shadow act as a visual mantra, a sacred rhythm complementing chants, offerings, and ceremonial movement? The evidence hints at intention but does not confirm specifics. Even more enigmatic are the artifacts discovered within and around the temple. Stone vessels, clay figurines, and inscribed tablets provide tantalizing clues, yet they raise as many questions as they answer. Some inscriptions describe offerings to Inanna and other gods, but the texts are fragmentary, leaving gaps that ignite speculation. Were these records merely administrative, cataloging tribute and ritual expenses? Or did they encode secret instructions, guidelines for ceremonial actions known only to the priesthood? In a culture that understood symbols and words as vessels of power, it is not unreasonable to consider that the tablets themselves were integral to the ritual process. The White Temple also presents a puzzle in scale and access. Unlike smaller shrines or domestic altars, the temple's monumental size and elevated location suggest it was reserved for a select few: priests, officials, and perhaps the ruling elite. Ordinary citizens may have witnessed processions, offered gifts, or participated indirectly, but the heart of the ritual remained inaccessible, a guarded threshold between human and divine. What precisely transpired beyond those inner walls? Did priests perform sacrifices, recite hymns, or enact symbolic dramas of fertility, war, and cosmic balance? The lack of direct evidence leaves us with a sense of awe tinged by frustration. Some fringe theories take the mystery further. Observers have speculated that the temple may have served as an astronomical observatory, where the motions of the sun, moon, and stars guided ritual timing and city governance. Others propose that the temple's elevated platform could have functioned as a stage for mass spectacles, ritualized displays designed to reinforce social hierarchy and divine authority simultaneously. While there is no conclusive proof for such interpretations, the unique design of the White Temple supports the possibility that it was more than a static shrine. It was an interactive space where architecture, ceremony, and cosmic symbolism converged. The relationship between architecture and sound offers another avenue of speculation. The sanctuary's enclosed, windowless form could have enhanced the acoustics of chants, hymns, and ritual incantations. Did the priests' voices resonate through the hall, creating a sense of presence and power that transcended the ordinary? Could the combination of spatial design, ritual movement, and auditory experience have constituted an early form of sacred theater designed to immerse participants in a heightened perception of the divine? Even the choice of building material carries meaning. The White Temple's mud brick construction, faced with a whitewashed exterior, would have gleamed in sunlight, signifying purity and divine favor. Its visibility from across Uruk elevated its role as a focal point of urban life, a beacon of religious, political, and social authority. And yet, it is the very starkness of its interior, the absence of decorative flourishes, that invites curiosity. Why build such an imposing structure only to maintain such restraint inside? Was it to focus attention entirely on the ritual act itself, free from distraction? Or did it serve a symbolic function, emphasizing spiritual ascension over material display? The White Temple's enduring mystery is compounded by its destruction and reconstruction over time. Evidence indicates that successive rulers restored, enlarged, or altered the site. Was this continuity a reflection of tradition or a deliberate effort to preserve the potency of rituals whose origins had already become obscure? And if the temple's rituals were ever secret, as many suggest, how much of the original practice survived these successive changes? What was remembered, and what was lost to time? Even modern visitors feel the aura of secrecy that clings to the White Temple. To ascend its staircase is to enact a small echo of the ancient ritual journey, to step into a space designed for transformation, performance, and connection with the divine. Yet the silence is palpable. The chants, offerings, and ceremonies of millennia past have left traces but no answers. What precisely transpired within those walls remains, and perhaps always will remain, beyond our full comprehension. The temple reminds us that Sumerian ritual was not merely functional, it was experiential. Architecture, light, sound, and movement were combined to shape perception, influence consciousness, and mediate the presence of gods. And yet, in all its sophistication, the White Temple leaves gaps between us and the past. Gaps filled with speculation, awe, and a persistent sense of wonder. What did the ancient priests see when they performed the sacred rites? How did they interpret the presence of Inanna, the rhythms of the cosmos, or the symbolic meanings embedded in every step, every chant, every offering? Were these rituals purely devotional, purely political, or a carefully woven combination that guided the city's social and spiritual life simultaneously? Like the voice of Enheduanna, the arc of the Khafajah temple oval, and the gleam of the Warka Vase, the White Temple calls to us across time. It reminds us that even the earliest civilizations sought to understand the divine through architecture, performance, and ritual. And yet, it also reminds us that some mysteries are never fully revealed. They endure, not to frustrate us, but to invite wonder and reflection. As we leave the White Temple and continue our journey through Sumer's most enigmatic sites, we are left to contemplate the hidden rituals, the unseen ceremonies, and the lost knowledge that these stones have witnessed. And perhaps, in that contemplation, we come closer not only to the Sumerians themselves, but to the universal human desire to touch the sacred, to bridge the gap between the seen and the unseen, the known and the unknowable. From the gleaming white walls of Uruk's temple, where ritual and architecture intertwined to summon the divine, our journey leads us northward across the fertile plains of southern Mesopotamia to the ancient city of Nippur. Unlike Uruk, with its monumental ziggurats and prominent temples visible from miles away, Nippur's sacred precinct is more enigmatic, less immediately imposing, yet no less profound. Here, at the heart of one of Sumer's oldest cities, lies a complex whose purpose and meaning continue to baffle scholars. The Nippur Sacred Area, dedicated primarily to Enlil, the chief god of wind, air, and authority. The first impression of the Nippur Sacred Area is one of layered complexity. Excavations reveal a sprawling assemblage of temples, shrines, courtyards, and administrative buildings, arranged seemingly without the geometric precision seen in other Sumerian sites. The main temple, often referred to as the Kur, rises from a massive mud brick terrace, its foundations supporting structures that stretch over multiple levels. Narrow staircases, raised platforms, and intricately aligned walls suggest a deliberate orchestration of space, yet the arrangement is perplexing. Why choose this layout, so unlike the regularity of Uruk's White Temple or the orderly plan of Khafajah's Oval? Archaeologists have long studied the Nippur Sacred Area as both a religious and civic center. It is clear that the site was a major hub for worship, administration, and perhaps education. Tablets found in the precinct include not only offerings, prayers, and hymns, but also records of temple personnel, land grants, and political decrees. The intertwining of religious and secular activity suggests that Nippur was not merely a site of devotion, but a place where divine authority and human governance converged. And yet, this convergence only deepens the mystery. How were these activities coordinated, and why were certain spaces deliberately separated or hidden? The central Kur temple, rising on its raised platform, presents particular puzzles. Unlike the White Temple of Uruk, where grandeur and visibility were part of its ritual power, the Kur's inner sanctuaries were often windowless, dark, and difficult to access. Some archaeologists suggest that this design was intentional, creating an environment of controlled experience. Only the initiated priesthood or select elites could navigate its inner sanctums. But what exactly took place within those shadowed spaces? Were the rites purely devotional, or did they serve as instruments of political authority, reinforcing the power of the ruling class through carefully choreographed ceremony? Artifacts recovered from the Nippur sacred area offer tantalizing hints, yet raise further questions. Clay figurines, ritual vessels, and inscribed tablets abound, but their distribution is uneven. Certain rooms contain rich assemblages, while adjacent spaces appear deliberately stripped or empty. Was this the result of ritual cycles, periods of offering followed by clearance? Or does it reflect a more symbolic practice, where emptiness itself held meaning? Could some areas have been intentionally concealed, reserved for secret ceremonies or esoteric instruction known only to high-ranking priests? Speculation deepens when one considers the spatial arrangement of the temples and associated structures. Unlike other Sumerian complexes, where linearity or symmetry dominates, the Nippur sacred area seems almost organic, following subtle shifts in the landscape. Some researchers propose that the complex may have been designed to reflect celestial patterns. Paths, staircases, and temple orientations could correspond to solar, lunar, or stellar alignments, linking human ritual activity to the movement of the heavens. If so, the site would have functioned not only as a center of worship, but as a living cosmogram, a place where divine and cosmic order intersected with earthly governance. Another layer of mystery lies in the use of sound and movement within the precinct. Narrow corridors, raised platforms, and enclosed chambers could have manipulated acoustics, amplifying chants, prayers, and ceremonial proclamations. Did the priests of Nippur intentionally design these spaces to create a sense of awe, or to induce altered states of consciousness in participants? And how might the arrangement of altars, offering tables, and sacred objects have guided ritual choreography, dictating not only what was done, but how it was perceived by those within the temple walls? In addition to architectural puzzles, the inscriptions found at Nippur hint at a complex interplay between divine and temporal power. Tablets recording offerings and dedications often include not only names and quantities, but prayers for protection, divine oversight, and longevity. The priests of Nippur appear to have viewed the site as a conduit through which human action could influence cosmic and divine forces. Yet the precise meaning of many of these texts remains opaque. Were they purely liturgical, or did they encode instructions for secret rituals, cycles of initiation, or even esoteric knowledge of celestial events? The long history of Nippur adds further layers to its enigmatic character. The sacred precinct was rebuilt and expanded across centuries, accommodating changing dynasties, religious practices, and social structures. Did each phase of construction preserve older rituals, or were some practices lost or transformed over time? How did successive generations interpret spaces originally designed for earlier forms of worship? And might the architectural anomalies we observe today reflect intentional attempts to preserve the memory of lost traditions while accommodating evolving religious practices? Some scholars even speculate that the Nippur sacred area functioned as a hub for intercity religious coordination. As the principal sanctuary of Enlil, it may have exerted influence over distant temples, dictating ritual standards, calendrical observances, and political alliances. If true, then the site was more than local. It was a spiritual and administrative center that mediated between gods and human rulers, a nexus of authority whose full reach we may never fully grasp. And yet, for all its significance, Nippur remains partially veiled by time. Many of its inner sanctuaries remain unexcavated, buried beneath later construction or obscured by millennia of sediment. What secrets might lie beneath these layers? Could there be chambers, inscriptions, or artifacts yet to be uncovered that would illuminate the rituals practiced here? Or will the true nature of the site forever elude us, leaving only tantalizing fragments and unanswered questions? As we consider the Nippur sacred area today, it is impossible to separate the known from the unknowable. We see the terraces, the walls, the staircases, the temples, but we are left to imagine the ceremonies, the voices, the offerings, and the unseen energies that once animated the precinct. The site challenges us to think beyond the physical, to consider ritual as an immersive, multisensory experience that combined architecture, movement, sound, and symbolic action. The mystery of Nippur, then, is not only about what was done, but about how it was done, and what it meant. Were its rituals primarily devotional, ensuring the favor of Enlil? Or were they also political, reinforcing the authority of kings and priests alike? Did they encode knowledge of the cosmos or serve as teaching devices for an initiated few? Or perhaps, like many aspects of Sumerian culture, they were all of these things simultaneously. Complex, layered, and deliberately opaque. Like the White Temple of Uruk, Enheduanna's hymns, the Khafajah Temple Oval, and the Warka Vase, the Nippur sacred area reminds us that the Sumerians were creators of experiences as much as artifacts. They shaped space and sound, light and ritual, to convey meaning that could not be fully captured in words or images alone. And yet, these experiences are lost to us, leaving only echoes and shadows of what once was. As we leave the sacred precinct of Nippur, we carry with us the enduring questions. What rituals were performed in these temples, and why were some spaces deliberately hidden or reserved? How did priests and worshippers experience the divine, and what knowledge was imparted to the initiated that was never meant to be written down or explained to outsiders? The Nippur sacred area stands as a testament to the depth and subtlety of Sumerian ritual practice. It invites us to reflect on the ways in which the sacred was lived, felt, and enacted, reminding us that some mysteries are not meant to be solved in the conventional sense, but to be contemplated, experienced, and respected. And perhaps, in that contemplation, we come closer to understanding not only the Sumerians, but the universal human desire to reach beyond the visible into the realm of the divine and the unknown. From the wedge-shaped impressions of cuneiform tablets, where Sumerians captured language, law, and ritual on clay, we turn our gaze skyward, to the blazing symbol of divinity and life itself, the sun. Among the artifacts unearthed in Sumerian sites, one object has provoked both wonder and debate for generations: the so-called Sumerian sun disk. Discovered in excavations in Ur and Kish, these circular objects, often made of gold, copper, or bronze, are embossed with radiating patterns that evoke the sun's rays. To modern eyes, they are exquisite works of craftsmanship. To Sumerians, they may have been far more than symbolic. Could these disks encode knowledge of technology, astronomy, or cosmology that has been lost to time? The sun disk immediately commands attention. Its perfect circular form, with carefully etched or embossed rays,
demonstrates a sophistication of design rarely seen in objects of comparable age, often dating back to the early dynastic period around 2900 to 2350 BCE. Some discs feature small central holes, suggesting they could be mounted, spun, or aligned in ways that allowed interaction with sunlight or shadow. The craftsmanship is meticulous. The edges are smooth, the patterns symmetrical, and the metallic surfaces often polished to reflect light in striking ways. One can imagine the discs catching the first rays of morning, glinting in temple courtyards or ceremonial chambers. In mainstream scholarship, the sun disk is primarily interpreted as a religious or symbolic object, representing the sun god Utu or Shamash, a deity of light, justice, and cosmic order. Its presence in temples, shrines, and tombs supports this interpretation. The disk was likely a marker of divine authority, a symbol of life, illumination, and celestial oversight. Yet, questions remain. Why did the Sumerians invest such precision in these objects? Were they purely symbolic, or did their design serve additional purposes, practical, ceremonial, or even technological? Some researchers have noted curious details that complicate the purely symbolic interpretation. Certain discs appear to be perfectly balanced, their shapes optimized in a way that suggests motion. Could they have been designed to rotate, to track the sun across the sky, or to interact with light in ritualized ceremonies? Others point to the precision of radial lines. Could these marks encode calendrical information, astronomical observations, or geometric knowledge that the Sumerians applied to practical problems such as agriculture or urban planning? If so, these discs are not merely artifacts of devotion. They may be evidence of a sophisticated understanding of natural cycles and celestial mechanics. One particularly intriguing aspect is the metallurgical skill involved in crafting these discs. Gold, copper, and bronze require smelting, alloying, and precise shaping. Processes demanding knowledge of temperature control, chemical properties, and mechanical manipulation. The Sumerians were already adept at metalwork, as evidenced by weapons, jewelry, and ceremonial implements. But the sun discs suggest a level of experimentation and intentionality that goes beyond ornamentation. Could these discs represent an early form of technology, where material science and symbolic meaning intersected to create objects of both practical and ritual function? Some fringe theories propose even more radical interpretations. Observers have speculated that the central holes and radiating patterns could have been used to focus sunlight, generate heat, or even produce mechanical movement, proto-technologies that predate known inventions by millennia. While no definitive evidence confirms such uses, the possibility fuels fascination. Did the Sumerians possess knowledge of mechanical principles now lost to history, encoded subtly in ritual objects, or are these theories projections of modern technological expectations onto ancient symbols? Equally compelling is the context in which these discs were found. Many appear in temple treasuries, suggesting association with religious authority, ritual observances, or elite consumption. Others are discovered in graves, indicating their value as symbols of status or protection in the afterlife. The dual presence in sacred and funerary contexts raises questions. Were these objects intended to bridge the mortal and divine realms, to channel solar energy in symbolic or practical ways, or to encode celestial knowledge meant for the initiated? Consider for a moment the act of observation itself. In a temple courtyard at dawn, a disc may have been held aloft or mounted on a stand, catching the first light. The radiating patterns would create reflections, cast shadows, and perhaps even move in alignment with the sun's path. Could this have been a ritual performance, where the interaction of light and object mirrored cosmic order, teaching observers the rhythms of day, season, and year? Could these interactions have served as mnemonic devices, allowing priests and scribes to track celestial cycles without written records? Another layer of mystery lies in the symbolic resonance of the disks. In Sumerian cosmology, the sun was not merely a source of light, but a regulator of justice, morality, and societal order. Shamash, the sun god, was both observer and judge, illuminating truth and overseeing human affairs. Could the sun disk have functioned as a physical embodiment of this principle, a tangible representation of divine oversight? And if so, was its design intended to amplify perceived power, creating a visual and psychological connection between humans, ritual, and deity? Comparisons with other ancient civilizations deepen the intrigue. Similar sun disks appear across the ancient Near East, from Elamite burials to early Anatolian sites, suggesting shared symbolism or technological ideas. Yet the Sumerian examples are among the earliest known, and their precision and context hint at a uniquely developed system of meaning and function. What knowledge traveled across regions, and what remained uniquely Sumerian? Could these disks represent an early global understanding of solar observation, embedded in objects that combined ritual, symbolism, and technical design? The metallurgical sophistication, symbolic richness, and potential functionality of the disks converge to create an artifact that straddles multiple dimensions: aesthetic, ritualistic, technological, and intellectual. Were these disks purely ceremonial, or do they hint at hidden knowledge of natural law? Did their makers intend for them to be observed in specific alignments, moved in prescribed sequences, or combined with other devices? If so, what principles of mechanics, geometry, or astronomy were encoded in their design? Even more enigmatic is the possibility that some sun disks may have functioned in tandem with other Sumerian artifacts, cuneiform records, temple layouts, or ceremonial objects, forming an integrated system of knowledge. Could the temples themselves, the staircases and sanctuaries, when combined with symbolic objects like the sun disk, have served as functional observatories or ritual instruments? Could the disks, in essence, be a lost interface between human action, celestial observation, and divine interaction? In contemplating these possibilities, we are reminded of the broader pattern we have encountered in Sumerian culture, a civilization deeply attuned to the interplay between the material and the mystical, the practical and the symbolic. From Enheduanna's hymns to the White Temple of Uruk, the Ikur of Nippur, and the cuneiform tablets that recorded human knowledge, the Sumerians created objects and spaces designed to engage the senses, elevate perception, and encode layers of understanding. The sun disk may represent the pinnacle of this synthesis, a single object where craftsmanship, cosmology, and potentially technology converge. Yet for all its intrigue, the sun disk remains enigmatic. Despite careful study, no definitive explanation fully accounts for its function, symbolic meaning, or possible technological role. Was it merely a devotional emblem of Shamash, a sophisticated ceremonial instrument, an early astronomical device, or something altogether lost to history? Perhaps it was all of these things at once, a multi-layered creation whose secrets resist total comprehension. As we examine the sun disk today, its brilliance invites reflection not only on Sumerian skill and creativity, but on the mysteries that lie at the intersection of science, art, and spirituality. How did ancient minds conceive of the sun, its power, and its cycles? And how did they encode that understanding in objects of enduring beauty? What knowledge did they possess of celestial patterns, mechanics, or symbolic resonance that we have yet to rediscover? Like the cuneiform tablets, the sacred precincts of Nippur, and the White Temple of Uruk, the sun disk is both a tangible artifact and a question, a silent witness to a civilization whose genius and ingenuity continue to intrigue, inspire, and elude. And as we ponder its rays, its balance, and its radiating design, we are reminded that the Sumerians left us more than material remains. They left challenges to our understanding, invitations to wonder,
and mysteries that may endure far beyond the reach of modern inquiry. The Sumerian sun disk stands as a testament to the civilization's capacity for both ritual and innovation, beauty and function, known and unknowable. It is a reminder that in ancient Mesopotamia, the pursuit of understanding, of the cosmos, of the divine, and of human potential was a project that spanned clay, stone, metal, and imagination. And perhaps the ultimate mystery is this: how much of that knowledge has been lost, and how much remains encoded in the artifacts, structures, and symbols that have survived to challenge us today? From the intimate intricacy of the Warka cone mosaic, where patterns of colored clay hinted at symbolic, ritualistic, and perhaps cosmological meaning, our attention now expands outward to the monumental scale of Uruk itself, one of humanity's first truly urban centers. Rising from the alluvial plains of southern Mesopotamia, the city walls of Uruk stretch for kilometers, enclosing not only homes, temples, and markets, but an entire civilization's social, political, and spiritual life. Today, only remnants remain, weathered by millennia of wind, flood, and human activity. Yet even in their ruins, the walls exude an aura of mystery, a silent witness to engineering, ambition, and possibly hidden knowledge that continues to puzzle archaeologists and historians. The sheer scale of these walls is staggering. Early estimates suggest that Uruk's fortifications extended over 9 kilometers, with thicknesses reaching up to 10 meters in some sections and towering heights that would have dominated the cityscape. Built from mud brick and bitumen, they exhibit a construction precision that reflects both technical skill and an understanding of structural integrity remarkably advanced for their time. Every corner, gateway, and bastion seems deliberate, designed to endure not just the physical pressures of flood, wind, and time, but the social pressures of defense, control, and ritual significance. Mainstream scholarship frames the walls primarily as defensive structures, erected to protect a rapidly growing population, secure trade routes, and assert political power. Yet several aspects resist simple explanation. The walls were massively labor-intensive to construct, requiring immense coordination, resources, and workforce management. For a civilization whose records emphasize temple economies, religious observances, and symbolic governance, one might ask, why devote such effort to fortifications in an era when warfare was not yet as systematized as it would become in later civilizations? Were these walls primarily practical, or did they carry additional symbolic, ritual, or even astronomical significance? The walls' orientation and placement raise further questions. Stretching across the plains in careful arcs and straight segments, they intersect with natural terrain and watercourses in ways that suggest deliberate planning. Some researchers propose that their layout may align with seasonal floods, celestial events, or even sacred geography. Could the walls have been designed to integrate not only urban defense, but also ritual pathways, cosmic symbolism, or astronomical observation? Did the Sumerians see the city itself as a microcosm of the cosmos, with the walls marking the boundary between the human and the divine, the mundane and the sacred? Equally intriguing are the gateways and towers that punctuate the walls. The largest, known as the Anu Gate, bears traces of ceremonial significance, including decorated facades and evidence of processional use. Some scholars suggest that citizens or priests would move through these gates in ritual observances, linking civic life with divine oversight. Others speculate that the towers may have served as observation posts, not merely for defense, but for monitoring celestial events, the flow of water, or social activity. Could the combination of height, positioning, and structural design reflect a sophisticated understanding of surveillance, timekeeping, or symbolic oversight, blending practical and sacred functions in a single architectural program? The construction techniques themselves are equally enigmatic. Uruk's walls were made from mud bricks, but not haphazardly.
Many bricks were uniform in size and composition, baked or sun-dried to maximize durability. Evidence suggests careful layering and bonding, creating a structure both resilient and monumental. The sourcing of materials, transport of bricks, and labor coordination required an organizational sophistication that implies more than ordinary construction knowledge. Did the Sumerians encode information in brick patterns, measurements, or sequences? Could these details hold calendrical, astronomical, or ritual significance, hidden in plain sight? Some fringe theories explore more speculative interpretations. Certain researchers note that the wall's lengths and orientations could correspond to celestial alignments, suggesting that their construction may have been influenced by observations of the sun, moon, or stars. Others propose that the walls, in combination with the city's temples, ziggurats, and ceremonial spaces, formed a network of symbolic cosmic circuits, intended to channel divine energy or reinforce societal order through spatial and architectural design. While evidence remains circumstantial, these ideas challenge us to consider the possibility that Uruk's walls were more than defensive fortifications. They may have been instruments of ritual, governance, and cosmic order. The walls also played a central role in social organization. They delineated sacred and profane spaces, regulated access to markets and temples, and defined the civic perimeter. Yet their sheer magnitude suggests they communicated more than practical boundaries. They projected power, identity, and permanence, a statement of the city's importance, resilience, and connection to divine forces. Were they intended to awe citizens and visitors alike, reinforcing loyalty and reverence? Did their physical presence serve as a daily reminder of the city's social hierarchy, cosmological beliefs, or political authority? Archaeological excavations reveal evidence of repairs, extensions, and modifications over centuries, hinting at an evolving understanding of the wall's purpose. Some sections appear overbuilt, others deliberately thickened, and in certain cases the walls encircle areas whose practical significance is unclear. Were these variations purely functional, or do they suggest a layering of symbolic, ceremonial, or even esoteric purposes? Could the Sumerians have intentionally incorporated hidden messages or sacred geometries into the walls, legible only to those trained in ritual or cosmology? The interaction between the walls and the city's other structures adds another dimension of mystery. Temples, palaces, and public spaces are positioned in relation to the walls in ways that may reflect both social and cosmic hierarchies. Processional routes, ceremonial thresholds, and visual sightlines align with gates, towers, and wall segments, suggesting an integrated system of architecture, ritual, and symbolism. Could the walls have been conceived as a living instrument, mediating human activity, spiritual practice, and observation of the heavens? Were the Sumerians designing not only a city, but a stage on which the sacred and the civic played out in continuous interaction? Another unresolved question concerns the labor force and social mechanisms behind construction. Organizing thousands of workers, transporting enormous quantities of mud brick, and maintaining structural integrity over long periods would have required sophisticated administration and knowledge of materials. How did the Sumerians coordinate such a massive endeavor without modern technology? Were the walls a demonstration of centralized authority, an expression of collective devotion, or both? And what knowledge, technical, ritual, or symbolic, might have been encoded in the very act of their construction, embedded in the layers of brick and earth for posterity? Even the wall's eventual decline raises questions. Some sections show signs of intentional dismantling or modification, while others succumbed to flooding and erosion. Did the Sumerians themselves repurpose parts of the walls for ritual, civic, or defensive innovation? Could the wall's deterioration hold clues to lost practices, forgotten alignments, or shifts in societal priorities? Each layer of mud brick, each eroded corner, becomes a fragment of a broader story,
a testament to human ingenuity, impermanence, and mystery. In contemplating Uruk's walls, we are reminded of the interplay between scale, intention, and meaning in Sumerian culture. From the tiny cones of the Warka mosaic to the monumental sun disk and the inlaid standard of Ur, the Sumerians demonstrated a profound ability to integrate artistry, symbolism, ritual, and technical knowledge. The city walls, in their enormity and precision, extend this pattern to an urban scale, embodying concepts of protection, hierarchy, cosmic order, and human ambition in tangible form. Yet for all their visible grandeur, the walls of Uruk remain deeply enigmatic. Were they primarily defensive fortifications, ceremonial structures, symbolic boundaries, astronomical instruments, or some combination thereof? Did their builders intend hidden meanings, secret codes, or cosmological references to be discovered only by the initiated? And perhaps most compellingly, what does the endurance of these walls, now fragmented and weathered, reveal about the civilization that conceived them, and the knowledge they may have carried into the distant past? The Uruk city walls, like so many Sumerian mysteries, remind us that physical structures can carry layered meanings: practical, symbolic, spiritual, and even technological. They challenge modern observers to consider that what appears simple or monumental may also encode complexity, intention, and knowledge lost with the passage of millennia. And as we walk along their remnants today, tracing the lines of ancient fortifications, gateways, and towers, we are confronted with the enduring question: what secrets remain hidden within the walls, awaiting discovery, interpretation, or perhaps contemplation for generations yet to come? From the enduring fortifications of Uruk, which rise from the ancient plains like silent sentinels of a civilization's ingenuity, power, and mystery, our focus now shifts to a singular artifact that distills triumph, divine authority, and political narrative into stone: the Naram-Sin victory stele. Carved in pink limestone, towering nearly 2 meters high, and originally erected in Sippar or Akkad, this stele commemorates the military victory of King Naram-Sin, the grandson of Sargon of Akkad. Yet, beyond its historical and artistic significance, it continues to puzzle scholars with questions about intention, symbolism, and meaning that linger unresolved millennia later. The first impression of the stele is arresting. Naram-Sin is depicted not merely as a king among men, but elevated to near divine status, a monumental figure ascending a mountainside, trampling enemies beneath his feet. His horned helmet, a symbol traditionally reserved for deities, signifies a deliberate blurring of human and divine authority. The soldiers, fallen foes, and bowing captives are arrayed below him in a detailed, rhythmic composition, drawing the eye upward along a diagonal ascent toward the king at the summit. The image is dynamic, almost cinematic, conveying both motion and hierarchy with astonishing clarity. Yet it is the subtleties within the composition, the choices of scale, posture, and spatial arrangement that evoke questions about intent and interpretation that persists to this day. At a glance, the stele functions as a record of conquest. It chronicles a campaign, identifies victors and vanquished, and glorifies Naram-Sin's reign. Scholars generally agree that the diagonal composition, unusual for Sumerian art, signifies his ascent both militarily and spiritually, a visual metaphor for victory and divine favor. Yet the stele's details provoke deeper questions. Why depict the enemies in such precise, almost ritualized forms? Why emphasize the king's monumental scale to this degree, dwarfing soldiers and landscape alike? Could the stele encode more than mere political propaganda? Perhaps cosmic or ritual symbolism intertwined with the Sumerians' understanding of power, order, and divine legitimacy? The landscape itself is remarkable. Mountains, trees, and rugged terrain are stylized with remarkable precision, yet arranged to highlight the king's dominance. This interplay of natural and human-made forms suggests an awareness of spatial narrative rarely seen in contemporary artifacts. Could the placement of mountains, the diagonal ascent, and the positioning of captives have been intended to convey a symbolic cosmology, a microcosm of order triumphing over chaos, or a representation of celestial hierarchy mirrored in earthly conquest? The possibility lingers that the Stele, like the city walls of Uruk or the Warka cone mosaic, functioned not solely as an historical record, but also as a tool of visual pedagogy, ritual affirmation, or even esoteric encoding. The horned crown of Naram-Sin is another focal point of mystery. Typically reserved for gods, its presence here suggests an unprecedented claim of divine status for a living ruler, a bold statement within Sumerian cultural norms. Was this an assertion of political power, a theological declaration, or both? How would contemporary viewers, priests, soldiers, or citizens, have interpreted this elevation of the king to godlike stature? And might the Stele also have served a ritual function, perhaps as a focal point in ceremonies meant to reinforce the king's legitimacy or to invoke divine sanction over the realm? Equally fascinating are the detailed depictions of the fallen enemies. Each captive, fallen soldier, and fleeing figure is rendered with careful attention to posture, gesture, and expression. They are individualized, yet idealized, forming a pattern of submission and chaos beneath the king's orderly ascent. Some researchers have suggested that the Stele's composition is more than representational. It may encode social, moral, or cosmological principles. Are the enemies symbolic of disorder, sin, or natural forces? Does their subjugation under Naram-Sin's ascent suggest a broader narrative about the triumph of divine order over chaos, a theme recurring in Sumerian mythology and ritual? Materially, the Stele is significant. Carved from a single block of pink limestone, the work required immense skill, labor, and planning. Its preservation over millennia is remarkable, yet it raises questions about original placement and visibility. Was it erected outdoors, facing a temple, a city gate, or a ceremonial plaza? Did sunlight or shadow interact with its carved surfaces in meaningful ways, highlighting Naram-Sin's ascent at specific times of day or year? Could the Stele have functioned as an astronomical marker or ritual focal point, its diagonal composition aligned with celestial events or seasonal cycles, echoing other Sumerian artifacts with potential cosmic significance? The Stele also reflects a sophisticated understanding of narrative and perspective. The diagonal ascent is unusual in Mesopotamian art, breaking from the traditional horizontal registers of Sumerian reliefs. This choice emphasizes motion, hierarchy, and narrative progression, directing the viewer's gaze from defeated foes at the base to the king at the summit. Could this visual strategy indicate an early form of sequential storytelling or symbolic encoding of time and power? Might the Stele's design have served as an educational tool, instructing viewers in principles of leadership, order, or cosmic hierarchy through visual rather than textual means? Some fringe theories propose even more provocative possibilities. Certain researchers suggest that the Stele's scale, placement, and iconography encode astronomical knowledge, mapping celestial hierarchies onto earthly conquest. Others speculate that Naram-Sin's divine elevation was not merely symbolic, but reflected an esoteric tradition, where rulers were perceived as intermediaries between gods and humans, their victories entwined with celestial order. While definitive evidence remains elusive, these interpretations underscore the multi-layered complexity of Sumerian thought and the potential for hidden knowledge embedded in their monumental art. The context of discovery adds yet another layer of intrigue. The Stele was found in the ancient city of Sippar, far from Ur or Akkad, suggesting movement, reuse, or deliberate placement in a specific ritual or civic context. Was the Stele intended for display in a temple, a palace, or a public space? Could it have been carried as part of ceremonial processions, its imagery reinforcing authority, divine favor, or cosmic order in the minds of observers? The artifact's mobility and context hint at functions beyond simple commemoration, functions that may have included ritual, political, and didactic purposes simultaneously. The Stele's enduring mystery is heightened by its narrative ambiguity. Naram-Sin is victorious, yet the identity, culture, and context of his enemies are less clear. Are they literal opponents, symbolic representations of chaos, or embodiments of spiritual forces subdued through ritual and conquest? The tension between representation and abstraction, literal history and symbolic meaning, challenges modern observers to consider multiple interpretive layers. Was the Stele intended to document, teach, sanctify, or all three? And if so, what knowledge or understanding might have been accessible only to the initiated, the elite, or the priesthood? Even in the modern era, technical analysis of carving techniques, material composition, and stylistic choices continues to yield new questions. The precision of relief, the depth of incisions, and the careful hierarchy of figures suggest deliberate intent at every level. Could the Stele contain hidden markers, encoding calendars, rituals, or cosmological principles within its composition? Were certain lines, angles, or proportions meant to communicate information inaccessible to casual viewers, only fully understood within a sophisticated cultural framework lost to time? The Naram-Sin victory Stele also resonates with other Sumerian mysteries we have explored, from the sun disk and city walls to the inlaid standard of and Warka cone mosaic. Each artifact demonstrates a fusion of artistry, ritual, symbolism, and technical skill, yet leaves significant questions unanswered. The Stele, in particular, bridges monumental narrative and divine assertion, human achievement and cosmic order, political authority, and ritual significance. It is a testament to the complexity, ambition, and imagination of Sumerian civilization, as well as its enduring capacity to mystify. As we study the Stele today, it prompts reflection on the interplay between power, divinity, and memory in the ancient world. What precisely did Naram-Sin's contemporaries perceive when they encountered this towering image? How did it shape their understanding of leadership, divine favor, and societal hierarchy? And perhaps most intriguingly, what elements of meaning were deliberately hidden, encoded in pose, scale, composition, or placement, awaiting interpretation by those attuned to the subtleties of Sumerian visual language? Ultimately, the Naram-Sin victory Stele invites contemplation not only of the historical events it depicts, but also of the mindset, knowledge, and worldview of the people who created it. Its enduring mysteries challenge us to recognize that Sumerian art, like their architecture, ritual, and writing, was multidimensional, communicating across time, space, and perception in ways we can only partially grasp. And as we leave the Stele to its silent witness of conquest and divinity, we are reminded that in Sumerian culture, victory was never merely military. It was cosmic, ceremonial, and symbolic, encoded in stone for millennia, awaiting our exploration, interpretation, and wonder. From the monumental declaration of power carved into the Naram-Sin victory Stele, where kings and cosmos converge in stone, we turn to another form of Sumerian visual storytelling, one that captures motion, ritual, and mastery over the natural world. The Warka lion hunt reliefs. Discovered in the ruins of Uruk, these alabaster panels depict a dramatic sequence of lion hunts, rendered with astonishing naturalism and narrative sophistication. Unlike the static grandeur of royal steles, the reliefs pulse with life, conveying action, tension, and the relationship between humans and the forces they sought to command. The first impression is immediate and arresting. Lions, rendered in mid-leap, muscles taut and manes flowing, confront hunters armed with spears and bows. Each figure,
man and beast, is carved with meticulous attention to anatomy, movement, and expression. The hunter's bodies twist and strain, conveying both the physical effort and the ritual significance of the hunt. The background, though minimal, suggests spatial depth through overlapping figures and carefully calibrated relief work. Observing the panels, one is struck by the Sumerians' ability to translate energy, drama, and narrative into a medium as unforgiving as stone. Scholars generally interpret the reliefs as celebratory depictions of royal prowess. Lion hunts were a privilege of kingship in Mesopotamia, a demonstration of courage, skill, and divine favor. Yet the Warka reliefs raise deeper questions. Why dedicate such effort to portraying the hunt in intricate detail? Why not simply depict victory or submission as seen in other contemporary art? Could the reliefs encode symbolic, ritual, or even cosmological meaning, illustrating principles beyond the immediate narrative of man versus beast? The composition itself invites scrutiny. Lions are often depicted larger than life, their size and form exaggerated to heighten drama and convey threat. Hunters, though human in scale, are portrayed with idealized musculature and poise, emphasizing skill and divine sanction. Might this deliberate distortion of scale signify more than aesthetic choice, perhaps reflecting a cosmological metaphor, where humans assert order over chaos or kings assert control over natural and spiritual forces alike? The sequence of attack, struggle, and triumph appears carefully choreographed, almost ritualistic, prompting speculation that these panels may have been more than celebratory. They could have been didactic, instructing viewers in ideals of kingship, bravery, and divine alignment. Material choice and technique add another layer of intrigue. The panels are carved from alabaster, a relatively soft stone allowing for fine detail, yet demanding skill and precision. The depth of carving, the rendering of musculature, and the subtle use of overlapping forms suggest a mastery of both artistic technique and visual narrative. Could the reliefs themselves have been considered sacred objects? Their creation a form of ritualized labor meant to honor deities or assert cosmic order? Was the act of carving part of the ritual significance, reinforcing the connection between human effort, divine favor, and artistic expression? Context of placement deepens the mystery. These panels adorned temple walls, particularly within the precincts of Inanna's sanctuary, suggesting an intertwining of ritual, urban space, and political messaging. The temple setting implies that the hunt was not merely recreational or militaristic. It may have been a performance imbued with religious significance. Did the reliefs serve as visual narratives reinforcing the deity's power through the king's actions? Could the hunt itself have been conceptualized as a ritualized struggle against chaos, mirrored in both myth and earthly practice? Some researchers note potential symbolic layering in the sequence of lions and hunters. Repetition, positioning, and orientation might correspond to cycles, perhaps lunar, solar, or seasonal, or encode moral or cosmic lessons. Could the lions represent forces of disorder, wildness, or spiritual challenge, while the hunter embodies divine human authority and social order? The narrative rhythm of the reliefs suggests intentionality beyond representation, hinting at a visual code that communicated ideas, values, and perhaps esoteric knowledge to observers attuned to its subtleties. The reliefs also provide insight into Sumerian perception of the natural world. Lions, apex predators unfamiliar to most citizens, were idealized symbols of strength, danger, and untamed force. Capturing them in motion required careful observation and understanding of anatomy, behavior, and physicality. This raises questions about the Sumerians' interaction with and conceptualization of the natural world. Were these depictions informed solely by observation, Or did they integrate mythic, symbolic, and cosmological dimensions, blending reality with narrative intent? Fringe theories suggest even more speculative possibilities. Some scholars propose that the hunt sequences might encode mathematical or astronomical principles, with positions, movement, and proportions corresponding to celestial patterns. Others suggest that the panels represent allegorical narratives, reflecting broader themes of cosmic order, divine hierarchy, or cycles of life and death. While definitive evidence remains elusive, these interpretations highlight the multi-layered sophistication of Sumerian visual culture and the possibility that the reliefs conveyed knowledge beyond the immediately visible. The social and political context of the lion hunt also warrants reflection. Hunting was a royal prerogative, and its depiction reinforced the king's ability to protect, control, and dominate both human and natural realms. Yet the relief's prominence in sacred space suggests that this mastery was not merely physical, it was spiritual and symbolic. Did contemporary viewers perceive the hunt as a ritualized enactment of divine will, a narrative reinforcing the king's role as mediator between gods, humans, and the forces of nature? Could the depiction of struggle, triumph, and order have been intended as both guidance and inspiration, merging practical, symbolic, and theological knowledge? Even the technical choices, scale, relief depth, perspective, and sequence, contribute to the enigma. The lion's forms, the hunter's postures, and the narrative progression are not random, but appear deliberately arranged to maximize impact and convey meaning. Could the reliefs have functioned as mnemonic devices, recording principles of strategy, ritual, or leadership? Were they tools of instruction, both practical and spiritual, designed to communicate complex ideas through visual form? And if so, how much of that meaning was intentionally obscured, accessible only to those trained in Sumerian ritual, cosmology, or visual literacy? The relief's enduring mystery is heightened by gaps in historical context. Unlike the Naram-Sin Stele or the Uruk city walls, which are relatively well documented, the precise ceremonial function and audience of the lion hunt panels remain speculative. Were they purely decorative, ritualistic, pedagogical, or all three simultaneously? How were they integrated into temple practice, civic identity, or cosmic narrative? And crucially, what knowledge or symbolism may have been lost to time, hidden in the subtleties of form, motion, and placement? In exploring the Warka lion hunt reliefs, one is reminded of the Sumerians' ability to infuse visual art with multiple layers of meaning. From the monumental sun disk to the intricate Warka cone mosaic, from the commanding standard of to the cosmic narrative of Naram-Sin's ascent, Sumerian culture consistently blended artistry, ritual, symbolism, and technical mastery. The lion hunt panels extend this tradition, capturing motion, danger, and authority in ways that are at once tangible and enigmatic. Ultimately, the Warka lion hunt reliefs challenge modern observers to contemplate the convergence of reality, symbolism, and ritual in Sumerian society. What did the hunt signify to the people of Uruk? How did the combination of naturalistic depiction, narrative sequence, and temple placement shape perception, understanding, and memory? And perhaps most provocatively, what secrets, practical, symbolic, or cosmological, remain encoded in these depictions, accessible only to those willing to look deeply, reflect, and wonder? As we step back from the panels, tracing the frozen arcs of hunters and lions, we are left with a profound awareness of the Sumerians' skill in capturing complexity and meaning within stone. The reliefs embody both action and abstraction, earthly struggle and spiritual symbolism, public display and private knowledge. And like so many Sumerian mysteries we have explored, from monumental city walls to the subtle mosaics and steles, the Warka lion hunt reliefs continue to invite reflection, interpretation, and awe.
reminding us that in the art of ancient Mesopotamia, mastery, meaning, and mystery are inseparable. From the fluid motion and ritualized tension captured in the Warka lion hunt reliefs, where kings and hunters alike engage in struggles that resonate both physically and symbolically, our exploration now turns to the heart of sacred Uruk, the Temple of Eanna. Rising from the mounded ruins of the ancient city, Eanna, literally House of Heaven, was one of the most significant religious complexes of the Sumerian world. Its sprawling platforms, terraces, and sanctuaries speak of a civilization attuned not only to urban life and political power, but to ritual, devotion, and perhaps knowledge that eludes our full understanding. Yet, even today, the temple's precise purpose, functions, and hidden meanings remain largely unresolved, offering a tantalizing window into Sumeria's spiritual and architectural sophistication. Approaching the temple site, one is immediately struck by scale. Layers of mud brick rise in broad terraces, punctuated by monumental stairways and gateways that guided movement within the sacred precinct. Excavations reveal foundations that date back millennia, suggesting continuous use, adaptation, and expansion over generations. The uppermost sanctuaries, thought to be devoted to Inanna, the goddess of love, war, and fertility, are encased by broad courtyards and smaller chambers whose purposes are still debated. Every element, the placement of bricks, the alignment of walls, the heights of platforms, reflects intention. But what exactly were the Sumerians seeking to achieve through this massive construction? Mainstream scholarship emphasizes Eanna's religious and ceremonial role. Inanna's cult dominated the temple's activity, with priests performing rituals to ensure fertility, civic prosperity, and cosmic favor. Offerings, votive figures, and intricately carved reliefs underscore the temple's spiritual importance. Yet, questions abound. Why did the Sumerians invest enormous labor, resources, and planning into a structure whose exact rituals are largely lost to us? Were certain chambers and terraces accessible only to priests or elites, indicating secret rites or esoteric knowledge? Could the architecture itself have served as a vehicle for teaching, memory, or spiritual experience, embedding meaning in its proportions, orientation, and spatial sequencing? The temple's layout is particularly intriguing. Terraces rise in seemingly deliberate steps, culminating in sanctuaries that occupy the highest points, as if drawing the eye and perhaps the soul upward. Could this verticality symbolize a journey from the human to the divine, a ritualized ascent that mirrored cosmic principles or the cycles of nature? The placement of doorways, thresholds, and courtyards may not have been arbitrary. Some scholars propose that the movement through the temple was carefully choreographed, a form of ritual theater designed to engage participants in a structured spiritual experience. Could hidden meanings have been encoded in the very act of walking through these spaces, with every turn, stair, and chamber contributing to an unseen narrative? Material and construction techniques further complicate interpretation. Mud brick, sometimes reinforced with bitumen or other materials, forms thick walls capable of supporting multiple terraces. Yet the precision, layering, and adaptation seen across different phases of construction suggest a deep understanding of engineering and urban planning. Was this purely functional, or could it have been symbolic as well, with the very act of building the temple reflecting cosmological, ritual, or societal order? Some researchers have suggested that the repetitive patterns of bricks, their sizes, or their arrangements may have encoded numerical, astronomical, or mystical knowledge, an idea that aligns with other Sumerian innovations, from the sun disk to the Warka cone mosaic. The presence of numerous chambers and subsidiary structures hints at complex social and ritual hierarchies within the temple precinct. Certain areas may have housed priests, ritual paraphernalia, or sacrificial animals, while others could have been designed for public gathering, instruction, or observation. Some spaces, however, defy clear categorization, leading to speculation about hidden chambers or functions, perhaps reserved for esoteric rites, astronomical observation, or ceremonial secrecy. Could these unknown spaces have contained knowledge intentionally concealed from the uninitiated, a practice mirrored elsewhere in Sumerian religious and civic life? Ritual artifacts found within Eanna add another layer of mystery. Figurines, ceremonial vessels, and votive offerings suggest practices that were both highly codified and symbolically rich. Yet their exact purpose, sequence, or meaning is often opaque. Why do some motifs recur with subtle variations? Do these reflect shifts in theology, political influence, or astronomical cycles? Could the temple have served as a repository for encoded wisdom, where art, architect, and ritual intertwine to convey principles of cosmic order, societal hierarchy, and spiritual practice? Some scholars propose speculative functions for Eanna beyond traditional religious interpretation. The alignment of certain terraces and structures suggests potential astronomical significance, echoing the use of monuments in other ancient civilizations to track celestial events. Could the temple have been part of a larger system of observation, marking solstices, equinoxes, or planetary movements, linking earthly governance with cosmic cycles? Might the rituals performed within the temple correspond to celestial phenomena, reinforcing a worldview in which human action and cosmic order were inseparably intertwined? The temple's association with Inanna adds symbolic complexity. As a goddess embodying dualities, love and war, fertility and destruction, Inanna's cult may have influenced the temple's spatial, architectural, and ritual design. The lion hunt reliefs we explored earlier, the ascent motifs in city walls, and the depiction of kings and steles all echo themes of struggle, triumph, and divine favor. Could Eanna itself have been conceived as a microcosm of these principles, a sacred stage where humans, deities, and natural forces intersected in structured and symbolic interplay? Fringe theories even suggest that the temple may have encoded knowledge now lost to history, technological, astronomical, or esoteric. Could measurements of terraces, orientation of stairways, or positioning of sanctuaries correspond to mathematical or calendrical systems? Were rituals performed in alignment with celestial events, producing a rhythm that guided civic and spiritual life simultaneously? While evidence is circumstantial, the notion that Eanna functioned as both sacred space and knowledge repository aligns with Sumerian patterns of embedding meaning across multiple mediums, from writing and mosaics to steles and reliefs. The scale and ambition of Eanna also provoke reflection on social organization, coordinating labor, resources, and construction across generations implies sophisticated governance and ritual oversight. Was the act of building itself a form of devotion, a practical exercise in cohesion, or both? Could the temple's construction have served as a physical manifestation of societal order, reinforcing hierarchical structures while simultaneously connecting the human, the divine, and the cosmic? Even today, Eanna challenges archaeologists and historians. Excavations reveal only fragments of walls, terraces, and sanctuaries, leaving vast portions of its purpose shrouded in uncertainty. What rituals were performed in the uppermost chambers? What knowledge was conveyed through architecture, art, and procession? Which symbols were visible to all, and which were reserved for select initiates? The temple's enduring enigma lies precisely in these unanswered questions, where visible structures hint at invisible meaning, and monumental construction conceals layers of potential insight. Eanna, like many Sumerian mysteries we have explored, from the sun disk and inlaid standard to the Warka cone mosaic, city walls, and Naram-Sin stele, demonstrates a consistent pattern: integration of artistry, technical mastery, ritual, and symbolic depth. It was a space where physical labor, human ingenuity, and spiritual aspiration converged, producing a sacred landscape designed to communicate, impress, and perhaps conceal. Yet for all its scale and grandeur, the temple's ultimate purpose remains unresolved, inviting speculation, reflection, and continued investigation. As we trace the terraces, stairways, and sanctuaries of Eanna today, we are reminded that Sumerian civilization consistently layered meaning, function, and symbolism in ways both visible and hidden. The temple stands as a testament to ambition, devotion, and intellectual sophistication, a place where human hands sought to touch the divine and where secrets may still lie, encoded in stone, spatial design, and ritual practice. In contemplating Eanna, we are left with open questions that echo across time. What precisely did the temple communicate to its contemporaries? How were the earthly, the celestial, and the spiritual interwoven in its architecture and ritual? And perhaps most tantalizingly, what knowledge, astronomical, technological, or esoteric, remains concealed within its terraces and sanctuaries, waiting to be discovered, interpreted, or simply wondered at? As we depart from the sacred terraces of the Temple of Eanna, where ritual, architecture, and cosmic symbolism intersected in ways that still elude modern understanding, we turn our gaze toward another remarkable facet of Sumerian civilization: the legal system. Unlike the monumental stones and reliefs that conveyed divine authority and royal power, the Sumerian legal codes were crafted in clay, inscribed in cuneiform, and designed to govern human behavior with precision. Yet they too harbor mysteries that intrigue and puzzle contemporary scholars. These codes, etched thousands of years ago on tablets that have survived the passage of time, speak to a society of extraordinary complexity, capable of balancing justice, hierarchy, and ritual obligation, but whose rationale, application, and subtleties remain only partially understood. The first encounter with these tablets is striking. Rows of wedge-shaped cuneiform marks stretch across hardened clay surfaces, meticulously inscribed by scribes whose training required years of discipline and mastery. Each tablet carries the weight of authority, its grooves preserving rules, fines, punishments, and societal expectations for posterity. The details are specific. Property disputes, marriage arrangements, trade regulations, and criminal penalties are catalogued with remarkable clarity. Yet the precision raises questions. How were these laws applied in daily life? Did the written codes reflect universal practice, or were they aspirational ideals, guiding principles rather than rigid enforcement? And what portions of human conduct, subtle social nuance, or ritual obligation might have been intentionally left unrecorded, understood only by those immersed in the culture? One of the most famous examples, the Code of Ur-Nammu, dating from roughly 2100 BCE, lays out penalties for offenses ranging from theft to bodily harm. Unlike later legal codes, which often rely heavily on retaliation or eye for an eye logic, Ur-Nammu's laws occasionally prescribe fines or compensations, suggesting a nuanced approach to justice. This introduces a fundamental question. To what extent were these laws practical, symbolic, or performative? Were they designed to maintain social harmony, to assert the ruler's authority, or to encode deeper principles of cosmic or moral order? The structure of the legal tablets themselves hints at intentional organization. Rules are often grouped by theme: property, family, commerce, or criminal conduct. Yet the sequencing sometimes appears arbitrary or even cryptic. Some passages are formulaic, others elliptical, with language that suggests ritual or symbolic significance beyond the immediately practical. Could the layout of the codes reflect a broader Sumerian understanding of order, hierarchy, and morality, where law was simultaneously civic, spiritual, and didactic? And if so, what knowledge or practices were transmitted only through oral instruction, ritual, or direct observation, supplementing what was carved into clay? The physicality of the tablets is itself intriguing. Some are small and portable, others large and monumental, suggesting different functions or audiences. Were some intended for public display, reminding citizens of obligations and limits, while others served as internal records for priests, officials, or scribes? Could certain inscriptions have been ceremonial, intended to be read aloud in temples or civic spaces, merging law with ritual and reinforcing societal cohesion through both spoken and written word? Context further complicates interpretation. Many tablets were discovered in temple archives, suggesting a close connection between legal authority and divine sanction. The gods are invoked as guarantors of justice, linking human behavior to cosmic principles. How did this sacred framing influence enforcement, adjudication, or perception of law? Did citizens obey the code out of fear of divine retribution, social pressure, or moral conviction, or some combination of all three? And what does this tell us about the relationship between human governance, ritual observance, and the metaphysical worldview of the Sumerians? Beyond enforcement, the codes reveal subtle insights into social structure and cultural values. Gender, class, occupation, and family relations are carefully delineated, exposing hierarchies, privileges, and obligations that governed everyday life. Yet there are gaps. Certain classes or groups are sparsely represented, while others appear in detailed prescriptions. Were these omissions reflective of lost knowledge, oral traditions, or intentional secrecy? Could the scribes have encoded layers of meaning, legal, ritual, or symbolic, that only an informed reader would fully grasp, leaving others with surface-level guidance? Speculative interpretations suggest that Sumerian law may have served as more than governance. It could have functioned as a tool of social engineering, spiritual alignment, or even mnemonic device. The repetition of formulaic phrasing, invocation of divine authority, and structuring of offenses and consequences may have been designed to reinforce moral, civic, and cosmic order simultaneously. Were these codes intended to train citizens, educate scribes, or instill collective memory? And might certain tablets have contained hidden sequences, numbers, or symbolic correspondences connected to celestial observation or cosmological principles, as hinted by other Sumerian artifacts we have explored? The role of scribes is particularly mysterious. Their training was extensive, and their labor was highly valued. But what did they understand of the law's deeper purpose? Did they merely record and transmit, or did they interpret, teach, and ritualize law in ways inaccessible to ordinary citizens? The possibility exists that knowledge of legal nuance, ritual integration, and symbolic significance was preserved within elite circles, creating a multi-layered system where written law, oral instruction, and ritual practice intersected in ways we may never fully reconstruct. The legal system also prompts reflection on human behavior in Sumerian society. How did citizens respond to fines, punishments, or directives? Were disputes settled purely according to codified rules? Or did social negotiation, ritual mediation, and customary practice shape outcomes? How much of the law was aspirational, projecting ideals of justice, fairness, and divine order, versus pragmatic, enforcing measurable consequences for tangible transgressions? And what secrets might lie in unexcavated tablets, fragmented archives, or oral traditions that have vanished over the centuries, leaving only tantalizing glimpses of practice? Fringe theories suggest even broader significance. Some researchers posit that the codes encode hidden numerological, astronomical, or symbolic knowledge, linking civic law to cosmic order. Others speculate that the careful categorization and formulaic structure may have served as mnemonic devices, guiding administration, ritual, or civic planning in ways that transcend the apparent legal content. While these interpretations remain speculative, they align with recurring patterns in Sumerian culture: integration of technical skill, spiritual practice, and symbolic communication across multiple mediums. As we examine the Sumerian legal system, we are reminded of its connection to other enduring mysteries. Just as the Temple of Eanna encoded ritual, architecture, and cosmic significance, and the Naram-Sin Stele, or Warka mosaics, blended narrative, symbolism, and divine authority, the law tablets reflect a civilization capable of multi-layered expression. They reveal governance and societal structure while leaving subtle traces of a worldview in which law, morality, ritual, and perhaps cosmic principles intersected seamlessly. Ultimately, the Sumerian legal system challenges modern observers to recognize the sophistication, subtlety, and enduring enigma of this ancient civilization. What knowledge, patterns, or meanings were intentionally encoded in the phrasing, organization, and ceremonial framing of these laws? How did ordinary citizens, priests, and rulers understand, interpret, and act upon them? And most provocatively, what secrets remain buried, lost, or hidden in these clay tablets, inviting us to ponder the intersection of human justice, divine authority, and the unfathomable depth of Sumerian thought? The law, carved in clay, preserves both the practical and the enigmatic. It reminds us that even in the realm of civic life, the Sumerians blended utility, ritual, and symbolism in ways that challenge contemporary interpretation. And as we move forward in our exploration of their mysteries, we carry with us the awareness that governance, like architecture, art, or ritual, was never purely functional. It was intertwined with cosmic order, societal memory, and layers of meaning that still whisper across millennia, awaiting discovery, reflection, and wonder. As we turn away from the carefully inscribed clay tablets that documented justice, hierarchy, and divine order in Sumerian society, we enter a realm where symbolism, spirituality, and cosmic imagination intertwine: the enigmatic Tree of Life. Unlike laws or temples, the Tree of Life is not tied to a single physical structure or codified record. Instead, it appears across multiple mediums: cuneiform inscriptions, cylinder seals, reliefs, and architectural motifs, offering glimpses into an ancient worldview where nature, divinity, and human existence were inseparably connected. Its recurring presence in Sumerian art and iconography has long intrigued scholars, inviting questions about its meaning, purpose, and the knowledge it may encode. The first encounter with the symbol is often striking. On a cylinder seal, a slender tree rises from the earth, its branches reaching outward in symmetrical elegance. Winged figures or deities flank its sides, sometimes touching the tree with gestures of blessing or offering. Fruit, stylized leaves, or geometric patterns adorn its trunk and crown, lending the composition a sense of vitality and intentionality. Every element, the balance of form, the placement of figures, the orientation of motifs, feels deliberate, as if the image were meant to convey knowledge, power, or connection that transcended ordinary observation. Mainstream interpretations often describe the Tree of Life as a symbol of fertility, abundance, and divine favor. It is associated with the goddess Inanna, linking it to themes of love, prosperity, and the cycles of life and death. Yet this explanation, while compelling, leaves open vast questions. Why is the tree depicted with such careful symmetry? Why is it often flanked by divine or semi-divine figures performing specific gestures? Could these representations encode ritual instructions, cosmological concepts, or societal ideals that are not immediately apparent? And what layers of meaning might have been understood intuitively by the Sumerians themselves, but are now obscured by the passage of millennia? The recurring form of the tree invites close scrutiny. Its branches often extend in precise mirrored patterns, while its roots sometimes spread in similarly deliberate geometries. Could this reflect an understanding of natural cycles, the flow of energy, or the mapping of celestial or terrestrial order? Some researchers suggest that the tree's structure may correspond to cosmological or astronomical patterns, a visual language linking earthly existence with divine or celestial systems. Were these motifs merely decorative, or did they serve as a form of encoded knowledge, transmitting principles of harmony, cycles, and interconnectedness across generations? Artifacts featuring the Tree of Life, often situated within broader ritual or narrative scenes. Winged genii, priests, or divine figures interact with the tree in ways that suggest blessing, protection, or sustenance. These interactions raise profound questions. Were these representations intended as metaphors for divine human cooperation, moral order, or social hierarchy? Did the tree symbolize the conduit through which gods influenced the human world, or perhaps the pathway through which human action affected cosmic balance? And if so, how consciously were these associations encoded by the artists and observers, and how deeply were they embedded in ritual practice? Material and technique further underscore the significance of the symbol. Cylinder seals, carved with precision, allowed for repeated impressions, ensuring the image's dissemination in personal, commercial, and ceremonial contexts. Reliefs and votive plaques, executed in stone, clay, or metal, suggest permanence and reverence. The investment of labor and skill implies that the Tree of Life was not merely ornamental. It carried weight, authority, or meaning worth preserving. Could the repetition of the motif across media and centuries indicate its role as a mnemonic device, teaching tool, or ritual guide designed to convey layered knowledge to those trained to perceive it? The tree's symbolic potential extends beyond Sumer. Later Mesopotamian cultures, and even civilizations far beyond, depict similar motifs, often associated with divinity, immortality, or cosmic order. This continuity raises intriguing questions. Did the Sumerian Tree of Life serve as a prototype for subsequent symbolic systems? Was its meaning universally understood, or did it evolve over time, acquiring additional layers of esoteric or cultural significance? Could its presence across regions suggest the transmission of knowledge, whether spiritual, technological, or cosmological, encoded in a visual language that transcended words? Some scholars propose more speculative interpretations. The Tree of Life may represent the axis mundi, the cosmic pillar connecting heaven, earth, and the underworld, integrating human, terrestrial, and divine spheres. Others suggest that the symmetrical structure could encode numerological or astronomical knowledge, reflecting careful observation of celestial cycles or seasonal patterns. While definitive evidence is elusive, these interpretations echo the broader Sumerian pattern of embedding knowledge across multiple forms: art, architecture, ritual, and writing, where meaning is layered, symbolic, and occasionally hidden. The context of the tree in ritual or civic spaces adds another layer of complexity. Depictions appear in temple precincts, palace artifacts, and private seals, suggesting a range of audiences and functions. Did its meaning shift depending on context, accessible to common citizens in some forms, and reserved for priestly or elite interpretation in others? Could certain details, gestures of accompanying figures, stylization of branches, or placement within a scene have conveyed subtle knowledge, guiding ritual, ethical practice, or cosmological understanding in ways that were intentionally obscured from the uninitiated? The recurring motifs surrounding the Tree of Life also hint at deeper Sumerian philosophies. Figures in attendance may symbolize guardianship, mediation, or divine sanction, emphasizing the interconnectedness of human and divine action. Could the tree itself serve as a visual representation of this interdependence, a symbol of the delicate balance between human behavior, divine oversight, and the forces of nature? And if so, how much of that understanding has been lost, hidden in the subtleties of form, proportion, and narrative context. The Tree of Life's enigmatic nature is amplified by the absence of explanatory texts. Unlike legal codes or temple records, no comprehensive Sumerian document explicitly defines its meaning, ritual role, or cosmological significance. This absence leaves modern scholars reliant on interpretation, comparison, and speculation. Was this lack intentional, preserving the symbol's mystery for those initiated into certain rites, or is it simply the result of centuries of loss and decay? Either way, it underscores the recurring theme of Sumerian culture: knowledge encoded in form, action, and symbol, awaiting discovery and contemplation. In examining the Tree of Life, one cannot ignore its connection to other enduring Sumerian mysteries. Just as temples like Eanna embodied ritual, architecture, and celestial alignment, and legal tablets encoded justice and social hierarchy, the tree merges art, spirituality, and cosmic symbolism in ways that challenge modern understanding. It reminds us that the Sumerians possessed a sophisticated visual and conceptual language, where meaning was multi-layered, accessible only to those attuned to its subtleties. Ultimately, the Sumerian Tree of Life embodies both revelation and enigma. It is at once a celebration of nature, a conduit for divine-human interaction, and a potential repository of knowledge, encoded visually, ritually, and symbolically. Its recurring appearance across media, centuries, and regions suggests a significance that transcends immediate utility, hinting at principles, truths, or insights now obscured by time. As we contemplate the slender, branching form rising from stone, clay, and seal impressions, we are left with profound questions. What precisely did the tree signify to those who crafted and venerated it? How was its symbolism integrated into daily life, ritual, and cosmic understanding? And what secrets, whether spiritual, cosmological, or esoteric, remain hidden in its carefully balanced form, waiting for those who observe, reflect, and wonder to glimpse the wisdom of the Sumerians? In the shadows of ancient Uruk, the Tree of Life stands as a silent testament to human ingenuity, spiritual curiosity, and the enduring power of mystery. A reminder that some of the most profound truths of Sumerian civilization may have been intentionally, tantalizingly encoded in symbols, waiting for centuries to invite discovery and reflection. From the symbolic branches of the Tree of Life, reaching into the heavens and intertwining the mortal and the divine, we now descend to the fertile plains of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Sumerians labored to transform water, soil, and seed into sustenance for their cities. Here, in the lowlands of the Tigris and Euphrates, the Sumerians left behind another remarkable record of knowledge: clay tablets meticulously inscribed with details of agriculture. These tablets, unassuming in appearance, hold a wealth of information about crops, irrigation, and seasonal cycles. Yet they also conceal puzzles that continue to baffle historians, archaeologists, and scientists alike. Beneath the practical instructions may lie evidence of sophisticated understanding, perhaps even a lost science that connected observation, mathematics, and environmental management in ways that modern eyes are only beginning to glimpse. The first impression of these tablets is deceptively simple. Rows of wedge-shaped cuneiform signs cover small slabs of clay, each line representing data, instructions, or quantities. At first glance, they appear to be straightforward records. When to sow barley, how to rotate fields, the measurement of water channels. But careful study reveals patterns, repetitions, and notations that suggest a level of complexity far beyond mere record-keeping. Could these inscriptions encode predictive knowledge, allowing farmers to anticipate floods, droughts, or the ideal planting time with remarkable precision? Were they a practical guide, a ceremonial record, or perhaps a combination of both? Many tablets describe the management of irrigation canals,
the lifeblood of Sumerian civilization. The texts outline channels, dikes, and sluices, detailing the distribution of water to fields with exact measurements. Modern engineers have marveled at the efficiency of these designs. Could the Sumerians have employed an empirical understanding of hydrology that rivals early modern methods? And if so, how was this knowledge acquired, tested, and transmitted across generations, preserved not in books but in fragile clay, meant to endure through time yet vulnerable to the elements? The agricultural tablets also frequently reference celestial observations. Certain planting or harvesting schedules appear aligned with lunar phases, the appearance of particular stars, or seasonal markers. Scholars have noted correlations between these guidelines and astronomical events, suggesting that Sumerian farmers were acutely attuned to the rhythms of the cosmos. But questions remain. To what extent was this knowledge based on systematic observation versus ritualized tradition? Did the Sumerians recognize cycles of fertility, rainfall, and temperature as interconnected phenomena, or were they guided primarily by religious interpretation? Could these tablets reflect a proto-scientific approach, blending empirical observation with symbolic and ritualized instruction? Equally intriguing are the numerical notations embedded within the tablets. Repeated measures, ratios, and calculations suggest a grasp of mathematical principles applied directly to agriculture. Land allocation, seed quantities, and water distribution are all quantified with precision. Some scholars speculate that these numbers might conceal more than practical guidance. They may encode early forms of statistical thinking or agricultural modeling, a sophisticated understanding of yield optimization and risk management. Were the Sumerians experimenting with predictive calculations, creating a framework that allowed them to forecast harvest outcomes in ways that mirror modern agricultural science? Moreover, the tablets hint at a nuanced understanding of crops themselves. Different varieties of barley, wheat, and legumes are cataloged with attention to soil type, climate conditions, and water needs. Such specificity suggests an intimate observational knowledge of plant physiology long before modern botany. Could this be considered an early form of agronomy, where practical experimentation, empirical observation, and careful record-keeping combine to produce consistent results across the fluctuating Mesopotamian landscape? Yet, mysteries persist. Certain notations and sequences defy easy interpretation. Numbers appear alongside symbols whose meaning remains debated. Ritual markers, divine invocations, or perhaps codes indicating yield prediction or field rotation strategies. Some inscriptions reference gods in connection with agricultural tasks, blending practical instructions with spiritual oversight. Were these divine references purely symbolic, or did they form part of a system linking human activity, cosmic order, and agricultural success? And if so, how intentionally were these connections encoded in the language, symbols, and measurements recorded on the tablets? The role of scribes in transmitting agricultural knowledge is equally fascinating. Trained for years in cuneiform and numeracy, scribes acted as custodians of information, preserving empirical data in forms accessible to administrators, farmers, and temple authorities. Were these individuals merely recorders, or did they interpret, model, and predict agricultural outcomes based on accumulated knowledge? Could some of the cryptic elements in the tablets reflect techniques or formulas meant to be understood only by those with sufficient training, an esoteric science hidden in plain sight? Beyond their immediate practical applications, the agricultural tablets invite speculation about the broader Sumerian worldview. The interplay of irrigation, planting schedules, celestial observation, and ritual suggests a civilization that did not separate nature, society, or divinity into distinct spheres. Instead, agriculture was both a necessity and a reflection of cosmic balance. Could it be that the Sumerians perceived their fields, water channels, and crops as living components in a grander system
where understanding patterns of nature was inseparable from spiritual and societal order? Comparisons with other Sumerian artifacts reinforce this possibility. As we have seen with the Tree of Life, the Temple of Eanna, the Sun Disk, and the mosaics of the civilization consistently encoded multiple layers of knowledge, practical, symbolic, spiritual, and astronomical, within a single medium. The agricultural tablets fit this pattern. Practical farming advice may coexist with ritualized timing, symbolic numerology, and empirical observation. They are at once a guide for daily survival and a testament to a culture deeply attuned to cycles of life, fertility, and cosmic rhythm. Yet the full extent of this knowledge remains elusive. Many tablets are fragmentary, leaving gaps in sequences, instructions, and measurements. Others are cryptic, with symbols and numerical notations whose purpose is debated. Could there be methods, calculations, or predictive techniques now lost, offering insights into weather cycles, crop rotation, or yield optimization that surpass our modern understanding? Were there overarching principles connecting lunar cycles, river behavior, soil fertility, and human labor into a cohesive agricultural science encoded in these texts? And if so, how much of it was empirical, and how much was ritualized, a blend of observation and belief that allowed the Sumerians to survive and thrive in a challenging landscape? Some speculative theories even propose that the tablets hint at knowledge of plant genetics or early biotechnology. While controversial, these ideas arise from the specificity with which crops are categorized, cultivated, and harvested in the records. Could selective breeding, attention to soil chemistry, or observation of growth patterns have been systematically recorded in ways that modern agriculture has only rediscovered millennia later? While evidence is circumstantial, it points to a civilization that approached farming not as mere toil, but as a science intertwined with observation, ritual, and record-keeping. The hidden science within these clay tablets underscores a recurring theme of Sumerian ingenuity: the integration of practical skill, symbolic thought, and empirical observation. Just as temples encoded cosmology, steles conveyed authority, and the Tree of Life embodied cosmic and divine order, the agricultural tablets reveal a civilization capable of transforming observation into codified knowledge. They are simultaneously mundane and extraordinary, a blueprint for survival, a guide for ritualized labor, and perhaps a repository of secrets waiting to be fully understood. As we examine the worn edges and faded inscriptions, we are left with profound questions. What precisely did the Sumerians know about the cycles of soil, water, and seed? How did they integrate celestial observation, ritual, and empirical testing into a coherent agricultural practice? And what knowledge, whether practical, spiritual, or scientific, remains hidden within these tablets, waiting for a modern observer to recognize the sophistication encoded in symbols, numbers, and sequence? In contemplating these fragile clay records, we confront the delicate balance of survival, observation, and understanding achieved by one of the world's earliest civilizations. The Sumerians transformed the unpredictable waters of the Tigris and Euphrates into fertile plains, guided not only by labor and experience, but by observation, recording, and perhaps a form of applied science now obscured by time. Their agricultural tablets remain silent witnesses to a knowledge system both functional and enigmatic, a reminder that even in the most practical spheres of human life, the Sumerians blended observation, ritual, and mystery into a legacy that continues to challenge, intrigue, and inspire. In addition to architectural puzzles, the inscriptions found at Nippur hint at a complex interplay between divine and temporal power. Tablets recording offerings and dedications often include not only names and quantities, but prayers for protection, divine oversight, and longevity. The priests of Nippur appear to have viewed the site as a conduit through which human action could influence cosmic and divine forces. Yet the precise meaning of many of these texts remains opaque. Were they purely liturgical, or did they encode instructions for secret rituals, cycles of initiation, or even esoteric knowledge of celestial events? The long history of Nippur adds further layers to its enigmatic character. The sacred precinct was rebuilt and expanded across centuries, accommodating changing dynasties, religious practices, and social structures. Did each phase of construction preserve older rituals, or were some practices lost or transformed over time? How did successive generations interpret spaces originally designed for earlier forms of worship? And might the architectural anomalies we observe today reflect intentional attempts to preserve the memory of lost traditions while accommodating evolving religious practices? Some scholars even speculate that the Nippur sacred area functioned as a hub for intercity religious coordination. As the principal sanctuary of Enlil, it may have exerted influence over distant temples, dictating ritual standards, calendrical observances, and political alliances. If true, then the site was more than local. It was a spiritual and administrative center that mediated between gods and human rulers, a nexus of authority whose full reach we may never fully grasp. And yet, for all its significance, Nippur remains partially veiled by time. Many of its inner sanctuaries remain unexcavated, buried beneath later construction or obscured by millennia of sediment. What secrets might lie beneath these layers? Could there be chambers, inscriptions, or artifacts yet to be uncovered that would illuminate the rituals practiced here? Or will the true nature of the site forever elude us, leaving only tantalizing fragments and unanswered questions? As we consider the Nippur sacred area today, it is impossible to separate the known from the unknowable. We see the terraces, the walls, the staircases, the temples, but we are left to imagine the ceremonies, the voices, the offerings, and the unseen energies that once animated the precinct. The site challenges us to think beyond the physical, to consider ritual as an immersive, multisensory experience that combined architecture, movement, sound, and symbolic action. The mystery of Nippur, then, is not only about what was done, but about how it was done, and what it meant. Were its rituals primarily devotional, ensuring the favor of Enlil, or were they also political, reinforcing the authority of kings and priests alike? Did they encode knowledge of the cosmos or serve as teaching devices for an initiated few? Or perhaps, like many aspects of Sumerian culture, they were all of these things simultaneously. Complex, layered, and deliberately opaque. Like the White Temple of Uruk, Enheduanna's hymns, the Khafajah Temple Oval, and the Warka Vase, the Nippur sacred area reminds us that the Sumerians were creators of experiences as much as artifacts. They shaped space and sound, light and ritual, to convey meaning that could not be fully captured in words or images alone. And yet, these experiences are lost to us, leaving only echoes and shadows of what once was. As we leave the sacred precinct of Nippur, we carry with us the enduring questions. What rituals were performed in these temples, and why were some spaces deliberately hidden or reserved? How did priests and worshippers experience the divine, and what knowledge was imparted to the initiated that was never meant to be written down or explained to outsiders? The Nippur sacred area stands as a testament to the depth and subtlety of Sumerian ritual practice. It invites us to reflect on the ways in which the sacred was lived, felt, and enacted, reminding us that some mysteries are not meant to be solved in the conventional sense, but to be contemplated, experienced, and respected. And perhaps, in that contemplation, we come closer to understanding not only the Sumerians, but the universal human desire to reach beyond the visible into the realm of the divine and the unknown. Some modern scholars have ventured into more speculative territory. Certain cuneiform inscriptions, particularly astronomical records, incantations, and mystical texts, contain sequences of numbers, symbols, and formulaic language that remain difficult to interpret fully. Could these tablets encode knowledge of the stars, cycles of nature, or even esoteric cosmology? Did the Sumerians understand principles of mathematics, astronomy, or metaphysics that they embedded in ways that are now partially lost to us? The evidence suggests extraordinary sophistication, yet the full depth of that knowledge remains tantalizingly out of reach. The tactile nature of cuneiform adds yet another layer of mystery. Each wedge pressed into clay is an individual act, a small intersection of hand, stylus, and material. Unlike spoken words, which vanish into air, or painted symbols, which can fade, these impressions endure across millennia. Does this permanence carry symbolic significance? Were tablets themselves considered vessels of power, their creation an act that bridged human effort and divine favor? In a culture so attuned to the sacredness of ritual and architecture, it is difficult to imagine that writing was a neutral act. Even after thousands of years, the mysteries of cuneiform persist. Many tablets are fragmentary, their original purpose and context obscured. Large libraries, such as those discovered at Nippur and Uruk, reveal a breadth of knowledge, from administrative minutiae to hymns, laws, and letters, but gaps remain. How much knowledge was lost? How much encoded meaning has escaped modern understanding? And how much intentional secrecy was embedded by the Sumerians themselves, guarding esoteric knowledge within a complex script understood only by a trained elite? The study of cuneiform reminds us that writing is not merely a tool for communication, it is a technology of memory, authority, and power. It preserves not only information, but the worldview, priorities, and imagination of a civilization. And yet, despite decades of scholarship, vast portions of Sumerian writing remain enigmatic, their subtleties eluding even the most diligent translators. As we contemplate the wedges pressed into clay, we are drawn to a broader question. What did the Sumerians hope to achieve through this remarkable system of writing? Was it simply administration, or was it also a means of shaping perception, codifying ritual, and connecting human action to cosmic order? Did the cuneiform tablets act as conduits for divine communication, preserving sacred knowledge in a form both practical and mystical? Like the silent courtyards of Nippur, the shadowed sanctuaries of the White Temple, and the hymns of Enheduanna, cuneiform is a bridge between human intention and the unknown. Each wedge, each tablet, is a testament to the Sumerians' desire to record, preserve, and perhaps even transcend the limits of their time. And yet, even in its apparent clarity, the system leaves us with unanswered questions, fragments of meaning, hints of lost knowledge, and the persistent sense that Sumerian civilization holds secrets we may never fully unlock. The cuneiform writing system is more than an invention. It is an enigma in itself. It reflects the ingenuity, spirituality, and complexity of a people whose ideas continue to resonate, whose mysteries continue to invite contemplation. And as we move forward in our exploration of Sumer, it reminds us that every artifact, every text, every temple is not only a record of the past, but a question for the present. An invitation to wonder what might still be hidden in the sands of time, waiting for those who look closely enough to see. As we leave the fertile fields and meticulously inscribed agricultural tablets behind, we move from the tangible labor of the Sumerians to the realm of time, power, and legacy. In the archives of Uruk, Nippur, and other ancient cities, among stacks of clay tablets meticulously cataloging law, ritual, and commerce, lies one of the most enigmatic records of Sumerian civilization, the Sumerian Kings List.
At first glance, it appears to be a straightforward chronicle of rulers, dynasties, and the cities they governed. But upon closer inspection, this list reveals patterns, anomalies, and mysteries that have long puzzled historians and archaeologists. Patterns that hint at more than mere history, and anomalies that have invited speculation about curses, lost knowledge, and cosmic design. The tablets themselves are imposing yet fragile. Carefully inscribed with cuneiform signs, they preserve the names of kings who reigned for lifetimes that, to modern sensibilities, defy plausibility. In some early dynasties, kings are said to have ruled for tens of thousands of years, a staggering figure that challenges rational explanation. Was this hyperbolic exaggeration, symbolic numerology, or a record of a time concept radically different from our own? Were the Sumerians attempting to communicate something beyond chronology, perhaps the longevity of divine favor, the cyclical nature of kingship, or hidden cosmological truths encoded in numbers and names? The king's list is more than a simple genealogy. Its structure suggests deliberate patterning. Dynasties are grouped by city, with reigns meticulously ordered. Between certain dynasties, notable breaks or gaps appear, sometimes marked by enigmatic phrases such as "kingship was taken away" or "the flood swept over." Scholars have long debated the meaning of these interruptions. Were they historical memory, a record of social upheaval, or symbolic commentary on divine intervention? And in linking human history to cosmic or natural events, did the Sumerians encode warnings, prophecies, or knowledge that was deliberately veiled to preserve power and authority? Beyond chronology, the king's list invites reflection on mortality, authority, and the nature of rulership. Early kings, described with impossibly long reigns, stand in stark contrast to later rulers with lifespans closer to our understanding of human limits. Could these extraordinary durations reflect mythological understanding, a symbolic connection between divine mandate and human governance? Or might they represent a form of encoded knowledge lost to time, perhaps conveying cyclical patterns of societal rise and fall, astronomical alignment, or even an ancient conception of time itself? The tablets themselves are often fragmentary. Missing sections, damaged edges, and eroded inscriptions leave gaps in the narrative. Some names appear only once. Others recur across dynasties in cryptic sequences. Were these omissions accidental, the result of time's decay, or intentional, designed to conceal or protect sacred knowledge? Could the king's list have served as a mnemonic device for priests or scribes, encoding not only political history but also ritual, celestial observation, or social law in ways now obscured by millennia? The recurring mention of divine intervention, God's granting, withdrawing, or restoring kingship, adds a layer of spiritual complexity. Kings are not merely human actors. They are enmeshed in a divine framework that appears to dictate the rhythm of history. Could the Sumerians have perceived rulership as a cosmic force, where earthly power was inseparable from divine will, natural cycles, or celestial alignment? And if so, did the king's list serve as both historical record and ritual object, its very recitation maintaining or acknowledging cosmic balance? The notion of a curse associated with the king's list arises from these layers of mystery. Some later Mesopotamian texts and later mythologies hint at divine retribution for those who misinterpret or disrespect the sacred chronicle of kings. Reigns end abruptly, dynasties are erased, floods or calamities are noted, events that intertwine history and legend in ways that suggest moral, spiritual, or cosmic consequence. Was this cautionary framing a literal belief in divine punishment, or a metaphorical mechanism for reinforcing order, authority, and respect for tradition? And what might have been intentionally left obscure
readable only to those trained in the symbolic and ritual significance of the list. Speculative interpretations abound. Some researchers propose that the King's List encodes astronomical cycles, with reigns corresponding to planetary alignments or lunar-solar events. Others suggest that the extreme durations of early kings may be linked to an alternative measure of time, one attuned to cosmology or ritual rather than human lifespans. Could the sequence of rulers, cities, and dynasties conceal insights into celestial observation, climate cycles, or even early mathematics designed to model temporal and social change? While these theories remain debated, they highlight a recurring Sumerian tendency to embed complex knowledge across multiple domains: myth, ritual, governance, and astronomy, interweaving human and divine activity into a single record. The King's List also poses questions about cultural memory and selective history. Certain rulers are celebrated, others minimized or omitted entirely. What criteria determined inclusion, emphasis, or erasure? Did political, religious, or esoteric considerations influence the recording of history? Were some names preserved as symbolic placeholders, teaching tools, or ritual references rather than literal accounts of governance? And in the context of the wider Sumerian corpus, legal tablets, temple archives, astronomical records, what hidden connections might exist between historical narrative and practical or ritual knowledge? The physicality of the tablets themselves reinforces the aura of mystery. Imprinted on clay, they were meant to endure, yet their fragility makes them susceptible to the ravages of time. Many discovered King's List tablets are duplicates or fragments, suggesting careful replication and circulation among temples or scribal schools. Could these copies have been used in ritual recitation, administrative verification, or ceremonial reaffirmation of divine authority? And what knowledge, cosmological, mathematical, or mystical, might have been transmitted through such repetition, layered beneath the surface of historical record? As we examine the interplay of history, legend, and possible symbolism, the King's List challenges modern observers to consider the Sumerian conception of time, authority, and cosmic order. Early reigns lasting tens of thousands of years may appear fantastical, yet they reveal a civilization thinking beyond ordinary human limits, encoding knowledge, morality, and ritual into the very notion of kingship. Later dynasties, with lifespans closer to reality, suggest adaptation, continuity, and selective preservation of historical memory, highlighting a culture deeply aware of both mythic and practical frameworks of governance. The idea of a curse, real or symbolic, lingers in the shadows. Misinterpretation, disregard, or disruption of the King's List might have been perceived as threatening to both social and cosmic order. Was this a belief rooted in superstition, a mechanism of authority, or a reflection of deeper cosmological principles? And if the Sumerians indeed encoded warnings, cycles, or hidden wisdom within the sequence of kings, what remains inaccessible to us, lost to time, or intentionally concealed in symbols and numbers? In contemplating the King's List, we are confronted with both certainty and enigma. It is a record of rulers, dynasties, and the ebb and flow of power, yet it is also a document of myth, spirituality, and potential hidden knowledge. It links human history to divine oversight, the tangible to the symbolic, and the practical to the cosmic. It exemplifies a civilization that encoded multiple layers of meaning into single objects, leaving modern observers to interpret, speculate, and wonder. Ultimately, the Sumerian King's List is a testament to the civilization's sophistication, imagination, and reverence for the interplay of time, authority, and the divine. Its mysteries, impossibly long reigns, gaps, divine interjections, and potential codes invite reflection on the limits of our understanding and the depths of ancient knowledge. What truths lie hidden within its sequence of names and years? Was there a lost science,
A divine calculus? Or a ritual function we cannot yet perceive? And as we ponder these questions, we are reminded that the Sumerians left not only records of what they saw and did, but also invitations to explore, interpret, and marvel at the enigmas that endure across millennia. The King's List, in its silent clay, preserves both human ambition and the shadow of the unknown. It is a document, a puzzle, and perhaps a caution, a reminder that even in recording history, the Sumerians wove threads of mystery that continue to challenge, inspire, and provoke wonder.